All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Cloverdale City Council meeting. Today is Wednesday, the 10th of March. It is 6 p.m. All members of the City Council will be participating in the regular meeting remotely via teleconference as listed below in the agenda. Please refer to the end of the agenda for instructions related to public comment and participating in the meeting. Please note this is in response to the recent resurgence of coronavirus cases in the council and continuing concerns of the government of California and the county public health officer about potential community spread of the virus resulting from prolonged indoor gatherings. City has suspended conducting in-person city council meetings in order to minimize the spread of COVID-19 virus and pursuant to the provisions of the governor's executive order N-29-20, which suspended certain requirements of the Brown Act. If you are watching in Zoom during public comment sections, both for the general meeting and during each item, there is a raise hand function that can be utilized. Either Irene or myself will note that you have raised your hand and ensure that your voice can be heard during public comment. If you are not on Zoom, I believe it is *6 to indicate that you are raising your hand. Let me just double check that. *9, sorry, I did that last time. Yep, so *9 will indicate you can raise your hand, and Irene will let you know once you can unmute yourself and begin your comment. So with that being said, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. And we'll go ahead and start the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember Lands, would you be so kind as to lead us?
Absolutely. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right. Can we have a roll call, please, Irene?
Yes. Councilmember Bagby.
Present.
Councilmember Land.
Present.
Councilmember Wolter.
Present.
Vice Mayor Cruz.
Present.
And Mayor Turner.
Present. And I see we have Summer Lands with us this evening, our student liaison. Thank you for joining us. Welcome. And any conflict of interest declarations for this evening? Seeing none. And we'll go ahead and get into agenda review. Any changes or deletions from city staff at this time?
Mayor, members of council, I just want to note that there's been additional correspondence that was received after the agenda was posted. Specifically, there was additional correspondence regarding dog ordinances, as well as correspondence regarding fireworks. Those will be included in the agenda packet online for any folks that may want to access the correspondence.
Excellent, thank you. All right, that will move us into public comment. Any person wishing to speak to the city council on any item not listed on the agenda may do so at this time. Members of the public have the right to speak on any item on the council agenda during that item. So what that's kind of calling out here is if you want to speak to something specifically on the agenda, please wait till that item is called. Once you begin your public comment, you will have 3 minutes. Emailed comments will become part of the record and viewable online in the city clerk's office. Irene, do we see any hands raised at this time for public comment?
No hands are raised, Mayor.
Excellent, thank you. We'll give it just another heartbeat or so, and then I'll close public comment. All right, consider public comment closed. Next, we'll move into proclamations and presentations. And first, if we could have our student liaison report from Summer, please.
Okay, thank you. So first, I'd like to announce that sports have continued conditioning, and we're getting our schedules, and it's getting more serious, as well as the city has made a decision, or has given us an update on the progress of the Washington School gym as well as the Jefferson School building. They are hoping that the gym is going to be finished by October, and the building has just gotten a new shipment of some new parts that's hoping to get that progress further in. The school board also made a decision regarding the graduation requirements this year. They have been modified to fit what they were hoping because of the percentage of students we have that are not meeting graduation requirements this year. And finally, there are a few dates set into place as regarding when we may go back to school. As of right now, it is set that March 22nd is when elementary school will go back, and right after spring break is when the middle and high school will return.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for our student liaison? Hearing none. Irene, did any hands go up by chance? May want to ask Summer any questions?
No hands are raised, Mayor.
Excellent. Got off easy on this one. So we will go ahead and move on to a proclamation. So we are going to be reading a proclamation declaring March 2021 as Women's History Month in Cloverdale. And we will also be taking a moment to honor some local women who have made tremendous achievements in leadership roles. So allow me to begin. Proclamation of the City Council of the City of Cloverdale declaring March 2021 Women's History Month in Cloverdale. Whereas American women of every race, class, and ethnic background have made historic contributions to the growth and strength of our nation in countless recorded and unrecorded ways, and whereas American women have played and continue to play critical economic, cultural, and social roles in every sphere of the life of the nation by constituting a significant portion of the labor force working inside and outside of the home, and whereas American women have played a unique role throughout the history of the nation by providing the majority of the volunteer labor force of the nation, and whereas American women were particularly important in the establishment of early charitable philanthropic, I'm telling you, it's the worst day for my tongue to get tied, philanthropic and cultural institutions in our nation, and whereas American women of every race, class, and ethnic background served as early leaders in the forefront of every major progressive social change movement, and whereas American women have served our country courageously in the military, and whereas American women have been leaders not only in securing their own rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, but also in the abolitionist movement, the emancipation movement, the industrial labor movement, the civil rights movement, and other movements, especially the peace movement, which create a more fair and just society for all. Whereas despite the contributions, the role of American women in history has been consistently overlooked and undervalued in the literature, teaching, and study of American history. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Mayor and City Council of the City of Cloverdale does hereby declare March 2021 as Women's History Month in Cloverdale and encourages the people of Cloverdale to observe March as Women's History Month with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities. So ordered by myself, the Mayor. And in addition, we would like to take a moment and recognize the many roles women have played and continue to play in the economic, cultural, and social fabric of everyday lives. The Cloverdale City Council would like to acknowledge just a few of the local women leaders in our community for the contribution they make towards a council recognition of women leaders in Cloverdale. And Gus, Councilmember Walter, you let me know you'd like to go first, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And, you know, there's just a few names that I'd like to recognize women for their contributions, especially here to the city of Cloverdale. One of them, of course, is Deborah Howell, the Executive Director of Alexander Valley Healthcare. And it's quite obvious what she's doing, the task that she's undertaking. And it's very difficult, and she should be recognized for it, as should Joyce Mann. Joyce is, of course, the manager of the Cloverdale Sculpture Trail, and she just kind of does that on her own. It's not like she has a contract. She does it for the love that she has of the arts. And you know, just a couple more. There's 6 women that I would like to recognize for their contributions to the city of Cloverdale. And first, Councilmember Bagby and Vice Mayor Cruz. They've both been dedicating their time to different issues here in Cloverdale and doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Councilmember Bagby is involved in all kinds of regional groups, and Vice Mayor Cruz is starting to get involved with quite a few groups. I also have Mary Ann Brigham, a former mayor, council member, founding member of the Cloverdale Performing Arts Center, and advocate for the homeless. And let us not forget Carol Russell, former mayor, council member, founding board member of SMART, and advocate for the recognition of Cloverdale. She was always out there beating the drum that Cloverdale is not in Mendocino, it's in Sonoma County. We have former mayor, council member Gail Pardini-Plass and Jesselie Raymond. They go back to my time on the council back in 2000. Before my time, we had former mayor, council member Carol Chase and Marie Vandergrift. I could sit here all night and, there's Kathleen Kelly from Kelly and Young Winery. I mean, the list can go on and on for women's contributions to this city. And I think it's great that we have the opportunity to thank them. So Councilmember Bagby and Vice Mayor Cruz, thank you for your contributions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Gus. Councilmember Bagby, would you like to go next?
Certainly. Sorry, I'm having a little technical difficulty. I have the honor of honoring our library team, and that includes longtime library commissioner Reese Foxen, who also was chair of the Library Commission at a really pivotal time. And she was instrumental in selection of the new director at the library, who's a truly world-class, and of course, our local Cloverdale librarian, Anna Daw. And I just want to especially, recognize, Reese and Anna's contributions to Cloverdale, and how important the library has been to our community during COVID-19. They really turned on a dime. Their operations, a library is an open building where you walk in and librarians are able to answer your question. And when our world changed, the library changed to try to accommodate people. And I know that Reese and Anna were instrumental in adapting the library to, being able to pick up and drop off books, encourage people to order online. Our Sonoma County libraries also turned on a dime and started providing, online story time, YouTube, encouraged people to download the Libby app and listen to, books on tape, to make more and more newspapers and news available on the Overdrive app, so people could get good validated information. And so I think we owed them, and of course Reese, so much for her years on the Library Commission, and she's continuing to be the interim library commissioner for, I think it's over a year now, because it's been difficult to fill that seat during COVID. So we owe Reese and Anna we owe them a great debt before COVID, and they've really come to the rescue and the aid of so many families and so many individuals here in Cloverdale. And I just really want to thank them and give them the recognition that they deserve.
Thank you. Councilmember Lands, would you like to go next?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, thank you. The first person I would like to acknowledge is Katie Young. For those of you that don't know Katie Young, she's the head of the Citrus Fair. She came in here to our town with big shoes to fill, having a local resident that had that position for about 40 years retire. She came in with people expecting a lot of her, and she hit the ground running like nobody I've ever seen. She's walked into several major events with the fires and floods going on that we had in our county. She opened the doors to the Citrus Fair and opened their hearts to the people of the entire county, not just Cloverdale, to help them when they were down and help them when they were in need. She found ways to get beds for those that needed it, for food, for all the clothing, for all the drives that we had to put forward to help everyone as their houses burned and things went on. She's currently working with the Resilient Cloverdale to have the Citrus Fair part of the emergency operations plan to where it's always powered. So it's on generator power, now backup power. So no matter what is going on in our county, our Citrus Fair is a hub for not just our town, but for our entire county and for anybody that needs it. I've watched the food pantry. I've watched all the homelessness. I've watched all that come through her building, which is a private company, which is something people don't understand is that Clover Citrus Fair is private. So none of this has to be done. So it is out of the goodness of their hearts and out of the hard work of Katie that all this is going on. And watching her with the Citrus Fair this year, take something that in this COVID world and turn it into such a beautiful project or experiment, I guess you'd say, as a drive-through Citrus Fair was pretty amazing. The second person I would like to acknowledge is Betha McLean. She is the current superintendent for the Cloverdale Unified School District. And I had the pleasure of being one of the people that got to hire her when she came in. And then she was another person that had big shoes to fill because we really enjoyed the prior superintendent. And I told Betha when we hired her that I hope she's worth her money. And she has come in and knocked the socks off of everyone and proved that not only is she worth what her money is, but she is better than any superintendent Cloverdale has ever seen. And walking into something that you know is going to be hard and almost a failure at best with all the cuts and programs and things going on with coronavirus, she took everything head on and has done a phenomenal job with the district. And I'm really proud that she is part of our town. The third person I would like to acknowledge, if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor, that wasn't on my list, is somebody by the name of Jerry Burgess. Jerry Burgess was a school teacher in Cloverdale for 35 plus years. And she taught me when I was a young child. And when I got with the school board around 2010, she was somebody in the audience. Now, she'd been retired for over a decade at that point. And she still attended every single school board meeting, took part in everything we did. And when the school had no money, she volunteered 8 to 10 hours a day, organizing libraries, helping with the city library as well, getting kids in and out of the library for their books, helping them with all their packets and homework and anything that she could do at all times, just out of the goodness of her heart, because she knew the school couldn't afford to hire these things. So she came in and made them happen so the students would have the opportunities that they didn't have because of the financial stress that we were under. So I would really like to acknowledge Jerry Burgess for that and thank her.
Thank you, Councilmember Lands. Vice Mayor Cruz, would you like to go next?
Yes, I am here recognizing the work that the leaders at the Senior Center have led, especially becoming the beacon of food security in Cloverdale. And those are Melanie Hall and Susie Croft. They have really being able to take charge of a situation that we had never faced. And given all the new nuances that came about with the pandemic, Melanie and Susie have been able to be a voice for everybody in Cloverdale. And they have been a voice with regional entities in securing resources for Cloverdale. And in addition, they are the gracious host of Coffee with the Mayor, which we will be enjoying tomorrow. And we really appreciate their effort in promoting all the programs that the city hosts and all the programs that engage our community. So thank you very much, Melanie and Susie, and cheers to all.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Cruz. I have the honor of honoring some leadership at the Cloverdale Chamber of Commerce, Nina Hanchett, our Executive Director, and Savannah Hemphill, our Commerce Marketing Manager. These two individuals, along with the Chamber of Commerce, have stepped up tremendously through the COVID season in helping our small businesses learn what programs are available to them, how to obtain assistance, and really continued to demonstrate creativity in promoting local shopping and businesses through their gift card program, their baskets for shopping different local businesses and taking selfies. They partnered with local businesses, creating 3-minute videos. They did their 365 days along with the rest of the chamber board of different things to see and do and just love about Cloverdale. And their personality, whenever they come onto a Zoom call or walk into a room, is absolutely contagious. You know they can do it, and because you know they can do it, you want to do it right along with them, and change can happen. They've participated in our Resilient Cloverdale efforts and continue to be a voice for the small businesses, in addition to their extensive knowledge of the city of Cloverdale, both being local individuals who live and work here. So I cannot thank the contributions of the Chamber of Commerce enough, and to really call out Nina and Savannah is my absolute honor. So it has been an absolute pleasure to share this wonderful information and these great words for the local women leadership in Cloverdale on March for 2021 of Women's Recognition Month. So thank you all very much. Irene, is there any hands from the public who may wish to offer any public comment on this?
No hands are raised, Mayor.
Excellent, thank you. So again, thanks everybody for the wonderful words, and we'll go ahead and close this item and move right along. So next we will get into our consent calendar. All items under consent will be considered together by one action of the council unless any council member or member of the public requests that an item be removed and considered separately. Council, city staff, do we have any items that we wish to have considered separately? Hearing none. Irene, any hands raised from the public who may wish to see an item considered separately?
My mouse froze. No hands, Mayor.
Excellent, thank you. So with that, we have a motion before us, should someone decide.
I'd like to move the item, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
I'll second.
I'm having the same problem tonight, Irene.
Mm-hmm. So I heard a motion from Councilmember Bagby, and I believe a second from Councilmember Lands. Correct, okay. Irene, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Walter.
You're on mute, Councilmember Walter.
Yes.
Councilmember Lands.
Aye.
Councilmember Bagby.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Cruz.
Aye.
And Mayor Turner.
Aye. Thank you, Irene. Next, we will move into communications. I'll start this off a little bit. I started to receive a handful of emails from members of the community wishing us to address different leash ordinances and options for addressing leashed and unleashed dogs in the city of Cloverdale. There were a few circumstances that were described that were really quite frightening based on the language that was in the letters, and they have asked for us to look at and consider what actions we might be able to take to alleviate some of the fear and mitigate some of the risk to individuals walking their dogs in the community. So David, do you want to just kind of introduce where we are right now, what the council can consider, and just what information we may have available to us at this moment? Thank you.
Absolutely, Mayor, and thank you for the introduction. Just in recap, to the mayor's overview, there are 5 letters that were provided in the agenda packet, 4 that were published with the agenda, and 1 subsequently received, that expressed concern about enforcement of leash laws, as well as other concerns relative to what I would refer to as vicious dogs. Currently, within the municipal code, there is provisions that provide for enforcement of dogs at large. This is specifically Chapter 6, Section 8. It enables our police department to issue a citation for dogs off leash in a public street, road, or alley, or other public place. as well as for dogs not in the control of the owner on private property whose owner has not provided permission to access that private property to the dog owner. So there is some authority under the current municipal code to enforce dogs at large. We do not, however, have provisions in our municipal code regarding vicious dogs. With that said, there is some provisions within the state law that provide authority to our police department to address vicious or angry dogs, and that's a matter of determination by our police department whether those particular statutes are applicable and require additional follow-up by our police department in terms of enforcement. With that said, I'd like to turn it over in just one moment to our chief to talk about some actions that we can take immediately to address some of the concerns that are expressed in the correspondence. And then additional actions council may want to take include reviewing potential options for further development of or implementation or consideration of additional municipal code provisions that specifically provide how we as a city would like to enforce or require addressing vicious or angry dogs within Cloverdale. So with that, Chief, I'll turn it over to you if you can provide an overview of some of the mechanisms briefly in terms of how the police department can address the current municipal code provisions as well as the state code provisions.
Yeah, well, let me start by saying that I have read all of the correspondence and I certainly understand the concern the community has regarding dogs being off leash, as well as echo what David said about potential situations that might rise to the level of a dangerous dog and or a vicious dog. And David also mentioned about a state law provision that does permit or give discretion to the chief to seize or impound vicious dogs if they pose an immediate threat to public safety. So even though we don't have an ordinance that outlines that, there is some state law provisions that allow that under certain circumstances. One thing that we have to be careful of, though, is there's pretty specific definitions as to what a potential dangerous dog is, as well as what a vicious dog is. And we would certainly have to be within those legal guidelines before we could impound or seize under those. So we certainly want to be careful about that. As far as our law enforcement, as David mentioned, we do have the ability to issue citations under our ordinance under 6.08020. And in this regard, all of the ordinances for the city are deemed misdemeanors. However, back in 2019, there was a resolution that gave the police department some discretion that could make those misdemeanors infractions. And so a certain circumstance like this, we would likely make that an infraction and send it to the traffic court division, which is how infractions are handled. But some of the solutions in looking into this certainly are, we are in contract right now already with North Bay Animal Control when it comes to impound related issues. They are certified animal control officers. We are not, nor is our CSO. But we do have some ability to work with them when it comes to bite investigations and or impounds and seizures, and we have done that. We're also looking to see what we can do to maybe extend or expand the contract with them to assist us with dog bite response and or dangerous dog identification and evaluation of specific dogs that might fall into that criteria. And one of the things, our CSO currently does not have the authority by post standards to issue citations. So we are going to be sending her to a course that will now certify her and give the authority to be able to write citations for leash law violations. So that's an option we're going to be, and I believe she's set to go in May. So we're going to try to move very quickly on that so we can start utilizing that position to be more visible in the parks, more visible on our streets, and actually taking enforcement action. And of course, with everything, one of the most important things we can do and vital things we should be doing is educating and get on an education campaign to include pamphlets about leash laws so the community is aware, as well as put out on social media announcements and education, and then advise the enforcement actions we will be taking. I think those are going to be critical steps in helping to resolve our problem. And we've really moved very quickly on this since we became aware of the significant issues. And so I think these are very good resolutions, and I hope that answers some of the questions that the community might have as to what we can do.
And Mayor, if I may add, Mayor, when this issue came up, and thank you for bringing it up, David quickly also, and the chief quickly also contacted my office regarding do we need to have an ordinance in place for the potentially dangerous or vicious dogs, as David and the chief mentioned. We did provide some analysis on the state law as well, and the chief is aware of the state law too. But there is a process, and I think that's kind of the main takeaway here regarding the law. There is state law that allows us to do something according, as far as the chief and his designation. But we would be working closely to make sure following. But it is a court procedure. It's not an administrative process. And if the city would like, we could also look at different ordinances that make it more of an administrative versus a kind of a court action. But even those court proceedings are really quick. They usually they don't take much time handling. But we will definitely work closely with the chief on if these issues come up.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions from the council at this time? Vice Mayor Cruz, please.
I do not have a question, but I also empathize with all the constituents that have voiced their concern. Last year, we had a situation like this. Teresa worked with the dog owners and so on, and there was not very much that we could do. But it is very important because there's more pedestrian traffic in the city, in our open spaces. We really need to make sure that everyone is safe and that everybody can feel that they can go and exercise and walk their dogs in a manner that it's not going to be threatening in any way. So I definitely, would love to see some sort of action to make sure that we are all in compliance with protecting one another and our pets too.
Excellent. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Bagby.
It's not really a question, just a comment. I just, I want the rest of the council to know, as I indicated in the correspondence that I forwarded, I did speak with a member of the public who had a very bad experience. And, I'm a dog owner, March is a dog owner, Gus is a dog owner. And, I've lived in Cloverdale for 21 years, and I've had some pretty serious encounters with dogs. 3 of them, I was lucky not to be bitten myself, and my dog was lucky to survive. So I really identified with a lot of the correspondence that came in. And I was also really touched by, some of the intentions saying, hey, you know what, we love other people's dogs, and we just want to feel safe walking our dog. And we don't want to go after people who might go to the city park at 6 o'clock in the morning and they run their dog because they're the only ones there and, without a leash. We don't want to go after people who have, control of their dogs. We're really, and then, call them back and get them on a leash. That's not what we're interested in doing. What we're interested in doing is being able to walk down the street safely with our dogs. And, this is Dogville. People love their dogs in Cloverdale. And it's a great place to walk, but it's a great place to walk until you have that one bad experience. And I think that that's what people are saying, is that there just needs to be, more awareness and some, fair enforcement to prevent these bad experiences, because it really only takes one time for a dog, it doesn't matter what size they are, to have a really bad experience, or for, God forbid, there's so many people who walk their kids and their dogs together and they have, a terrible experience. And, That's what we really need to get out in front of and make sure that it's a safe place for families to go out and walk their dogs and just be confident knowing that they're going to be safe when they're obeying the law. And I just really appreciated the tone of the folks who said, hey, this has happened and I'm concerned. I'm not interested in draconian measures and overreach. I'm just interested in a reasonable expectation that I'm going to be safe when I take my dog for a walk. So what I recommend is that we take this to the finance, admin, and police subcommittee meeting and do a little bit of the legwork, and then maybe the chief can come back with some recommendations, and and that way we can have members of the public kind of come to that subcommittee meeting and do a little bit of workshopping, hear about, their experiences and kind of what they want to try to accomplish. And then we can come back to the full council with a recommendation if that's the pleasure of the rest of the council.
Yeah, I can definitely see the benefit of that and found myself leaning towards finance, police, and admin. It meets monthly. We'd be able to get updates from the chief on whether the low-hanging fruit that he attempted to pick is moving the needle at all, i.e. the outreach, the allowing the community service officer to be posted or something along those lines. I'm not sure the right lingo in order to write the tickets or whatever. So again, yes, I think that's fantastic. As long as I don't see anybody shake their head no at me, I think we can ask city staff to please ensure that's on our next finance, police, and admin subcommittee.
And if I could, Mr. Mayor, there's just kind of one
Please.
more thing I'd like to add. I really appreciated the chief also saying it's public outreach. And I think that that's a vital component. So, making sure that, whatever it is that we move forward with, that there is, constant, regular scheduled communication that comes out from the city, that goes out on social media, that comes out from the police department, just communicating and reminding folks on a regular basis that these are the requirements. This is what we're expecting of each other as neighbors to keep each other safe.
Excellent. All right. Any other questions or comments from the council? All right, Irene, any hands raised on this one by chance?
No hands are raised, Mayor.
All right, we will go ahead. Oh, David, do you have what you need from that? You know what we're going to go ahead and do to move forward?
Mayor, you and the council have provided clear direction. We will include a standing item on the finance, admin, and police subcommittee, wherein the chief will provide updates. The chief and I will both provide updates on some of the actions that we're taking, and also look at potential options in terms of bolstering our municipal code requirements.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. All right, we will go ahead and move into public hearing items, of which there are none. That will move us into new business, discussion and consideration of the City of Cloverdale draft budget goal statements for fiscal year 2021-2022.
All right. Well, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Tonight's action is to discuss and consider our goal statements for fiscal year 21-22, which is our upcoming fiscal year. And before we begin a presentation, just a little bit of overview of where we are currently in our budget process. Normally at this time of year, we engage council in a discussion regarding goal statements for the budget that help drive the process of developing the budget and ultimately provide guidance on what are the key initiatives, activities, and programs that council would like to fund. And starting last year, we were embarking on a process to establish a 2-year budget process. And when I say 2-year budget process, what I really mean is 2 one-year budgets rather than a 2-year, one 2-year budget. So kind of a distinction there between the two. Of course, as we were embarking upon that process, the COVID pandemic hit. And because of the tremendous uncertainty around the impact of the pandemic on our revenue sources staff quickly pivoted back to a one-year budget. But in preparation for a 2-year budget process, staff had undertaken quite a bit of work to develop a work plan that was based on a 2-year planning horizon. And in doing so, we identified a set of initiatives that were outlined in a 3-phase timeline. That included, the timeline was broken down as such, 0 to 8 months, which we're currently at right now, about that first phase. 8 months to 16 months, or 9 months to 16 months. And then kind of the final phase of the 2-year budget process was the 16 months to 24 months. And that work plan was intended to be reflective of the council's goals and priorities in terms of identifying specifically the measures that council wants staff to work on. And so we kind of took a different approach in the sense of really focusing in on those key initiatives, programs, and projects that council had articulated to staff that you wanted us to work on. And as such, the goal statements also reflected directly the work plan that was included and provided for in the budget. And talk a little bit real quickly about the goals. There were 6 goals included in the budget. First and foremost, recognizing the impact of the pandemic on revenues was economic recovery, and the goal of staff to respond to the COVID-19 emergency by pursuing federal and state funding, by continuing to collaborate on economic development partnerships to assist the business community, as well as find creative ways to continue to promote support local businesses as we moved into a shutdown process, and certainly work with the county and our Chamber of Commerce on economic recovery planning. As council knows, the Economic Development Board prepared an economic recovery plan. Many of you as council members, as well as the chamber and myself, participated in that process. We wrote a number of letters supporting economic advocacy for our community and our city, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on today. And I want to really acknowledge the coordination that we had with the Cloverdale Chamber of Commerce and Nina Hanchett, who was integral to assisting the business community work their way through this pandemic. In addition, one of our key goals was revenue enhancement. And the strategy was to explore and implement strategies to enhance our fiscal responsibility as well as raise municipal revenue. One of the key measures there was renewal of the utility user tax, which thank you to the voters in Cloverdale, they supported the renewal, which is so integral to funding Cloverdale's quality of life and projects and activities that support the quality of life. In addition, we did have a presentation by management partners that looked at and addressed the impact of the pandemic on the long-term forecast for the budget. In addition, as we worked through the pandemic, we really invested in public safety and emergency preparedness, and our chief's going to talk about a number of the key initiatives that we were able to complete during the fiscal year. One of the goals that, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we didn't spend a tremendous amount of staff resources on was addressing the issue of homelessness. While there was a lot of time spent looking at and evaluating governance, and I know our vice mayor was involved in the homelessness ad hoc in looking at how we can better govern the continuum of care under the leadership council in the community.
Hey, David, real quick, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Yeah. It sounds like you're working through the presentation a bit and the slides are not advancing.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a preview before the slides. And then
forgive me, of course. Leave it to me to put my foot in my...
And so I know I have a penchant to talk a little bit, but so too much, but I'll move quickly. In addition, we, during this last fiscal year, or this current fiscal year, excuse me, we invested quite a bit in infrastructure and technology projects Specifically with technology, council approved an agreement with OpenGov. They authorized the purchase of new servers that are going to continue to support our operations. In addition, we were able to complete a number of critical infrastructure projects. I think of the slide repair work that happened at Vista View, the rehabilitation of the taxiway at the airport, certainly the Safe Routes to School project that has been on the project work plan for the city for a number of years, as well as other street improvement projects that were in progress. Last but not least is planning and sustainability. And of course, the council over the last fiscal year did adopt a resolution setting forth some sustainability goals. And we've done a lot of planning work, particularly for the Southwest planning area to facilitate future development of the city. So with that said, the budget working goal is to maintain a sustainable budget, which includes ensuring that we maintain adequate reserves, and council just took action to support enhancing our reserves at your last council meeting. We continue to fund mandated activities or required activities, all the while continuing to make progress on the council's work plans. One of the key issues that we want council to consider tonight is the fiscal impacts of your budget decisions, and not only in the short term but in the long term. And we'd like to get council's perspective on holding a workshop to provide for management partners to provide an update on their forecast work that they previously prepared that help inform your budget workshop that we'd like council to schedule later in May, and ultimately support a sustainable budget adoption in early June. So with that said, let's go ahead and start the presentation. And the format for the presentation tonight is I'm going to start again with an overview of the budgeting process, and then all of our senior staff are going to provide key updates on the work plan, as well as the key initiatives that, again, were part of that work plan that we presented to council as part of last year's budget process, continuing with the idea that what we've developed is a 24-month work plan reflecting 2 one-year budgets, and we're continuing with that model. And ultimately, what we'd like to see is get council support for continuing that process, because we think it really identifies a clear path forward for completing projects and initiatives that the council has identified are priorities. So with that said, Irene, if you can start the slideshow. All right, so we're going to get an overview of goal setting, which is a lot of what I talked about already. Purpose of budgets. Then we're going to go through an overview of budgeting, including a budget development framework. We'll review the individual department work plans, talk about the top budget themes, review the budget goal statements, and then end in discussion amongst council. So next slide. So overview of the goal setting process. Talked a little bit about this, but just from a historical perspective, council's aware that we used to do this in this really like 3-step process where we developed a long list of goal statements. Council then would conduct a workshop, go through a process of prioritizing through a vote by the dot process, and then ultimately conduct a numerical ranking where at the end, kind of the top 10 goals that got the most points reflected your top 10 goals for the fiscal year. I think the outcome of that process, while the process followed kind of a strategic planning process, ultimately ended in goals that didn't necessarily reflect the key priorities for the city. So what we've tried to do with this process is reflect goal statements that tie directly to the work plan, and as such, the funding initiatives, the staffing allocation, the operational budgets all flow and support the work plan. Next slide. So Again, the work plan and the goal setting is based on a multi-year budgeting process. With 2 one-year budgets were again about 8 months in, and starting the 9th month of the 24-month cycle. We want to ensure that our goal setting does integrate well with the budgetary process. And one of the key outcomes is we think it will really save time and effort. We hope that this process will work well so that we can develop next fiscal year when there's maybe a little bit more certainty, come back with this 2-year budget process and really implement it in one budgetary process rather than 2. And we think it will save quite a bit of time. Ultimately, we also think it gives council's perspective a little bit of a longer time frame, and the intent is to reinforce the long-term fiscal health of the city, looking out 24 months rather than 12 months. Next slide. So again, the goal setting process, what's reflected on this slide is for a 2-year budget process. We want to link your goals to the resources that we have available and be able to clearly identify that for the community what resources will be needed during the budget and set the meaningful objectives that can be completed within realistic timeframes. Ultimately, the budget will tie funding to these projects and activities on the work plan and ensure that the council's priorities are addressed. However, with that said, we do want council's input to modify the goals and adjust the work plan and reprioritize tasks as you see necessary. So there's some flexibility and adaptability in this process. Next slide. This is just an overview of purpose of budgets. Typically, budgets are focused on allocative efficiency. It's kind of that zero-sum game of how do you fund one activity, how much funding do you allocate to activity A versus B? If you fund more to A, there's less to go to B. One of the things we're seeing is this evolving role of budgetary process is to focus on budgeting on engagement of our residents as customers and subscribers. And I think one of the key activities that we're doing this is OpenGov. OpenGov is intended to be a transparent budgeting platform that's really intended to engage our residents in our community. And that was reflective of a budget decision that council made. Next slide. All right, so one of the things we are going to touch on as senior staff is each of the core services for our department. And I'll start with the city managers. Is the key function of your city manager is to oversee the general administration of the city's day-to-day operations. And is listed here, it's communication, communication, communication. And when I say that, what I mean is it's communication with the council, it's communication with the community, and it's communication with staff. All of that is very closely tied to a close relationship between your city manager and you as the council and the mayor, and us working together closely to address a positive working relationship with the community and the public. We clearly need to oversee implementation of the budget and ensure that the work plan is carried out and the personnel are in place to do that. And as council knows very well, one of the key roles of the city manager's office is the emergency response in close coordination with our police department. And last but not least, labor negotiations. So next slide. So in terms of major projects that were identified for the current budget, included update of the city's financial forecast, which was completed, bringing forward a revenue measure, which was renewal of our utility user tax, which was completed. On homelessness, we are getting ready to restart the strategic planning process with the community advisory group appointed by the council. We put a lot of work and time into the Resilient Cloverdale initiative, which was so critical and integral to our emergency response to the numerous emergencies we experienced over the last year. And certainly we dedicated a tremendous amount of time to responding to the pandemic, to the Walbridge fire, to power outages, et cetera. Required a very significant amount of our time over the last fiscal year just on that particular function. Additional initiatives, including developing a legislative advocacy platform that unfortunately has not started, but the plan is to begin that shortly. And last but not least, labor negotiations, which is in process. So that completes city manager's work plan. I'll turn it over to the city attorney to provide an overview of the core services. Our city attorney.
Real quick. So for the council, do you guys want to ask questions at the end of each senior staff's presentation, or wait till the end and just ask them to go back to their own slides? Do we have a preference for that? I see Melanie thinking just a little bit.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I don't have a preference one way or the other. Whichever is easiest for staff. I'm kind of jotting some notes as we go.
Okay.
So,
Why don't we go ahead and save till the end then? Yeah. Thanks, guys. We'll go ahead and save till the end. Jose, I apologize about that. Please carry on.
No worries. Thank you.
No problem. So, Mayor, members of the council, as David mentioned, kind of his role. So in a city manager form of government and the way we work here in Cloverdale, the city council has two employees. That's your city manager and your city attorney. I'm the council's attorney, but I'm the city attorney. What that means is, as council, the city council employs me in my office, but we're really here to oversee the legal advice and the legal actions of the city. As the slide mentions, we do provide advice to the city council, but also to all your departments. When you're looking at the different goals from every department in some way or another, and a lot of those goals, we're involved with legal components, with legal questions that come up. I'm the person that staff reaches out to have my office help with different issues that come up. If there's litigation, we're obviously looking at litigation. Now, council knows that you're part of a risk management pool, that a lot of litigation is covered, but there are some cases that are not covered, and that's where we would step in to staff those cases. We attend the council meetings. We attend, if asked, if needed, at planning commission meetings or other meetings involving the council or staff. I think the partnership that's developed between staff and my office is key, because as issues come up, we want to make sure to be in close communication in order to work together to accomplish the council's goals. Because at the end, we take direction from the council and we help kind of staff move through that. And of course, when you see documents, if there's resolutions or ordinances, for example, staff is great at drafting many of those. Sometimes they want our help to either draft an ordinance or to help modify an ordinance or agreements. That's also where we step in to make sure that everything's kind of in legally good form. So that's kind of our role. And next slide, please, Irene. And I think that this is kind of our main goal. Our main goal every year is to continue to provide legal support to the city council and city staff. One of our focus as well from all staff, from your city manager, your other senior staff, from even your involving the council, like trainings. I know that your city clerk, Irene, and I have talked about kind of the different types of trainings that we could potentially be involved in, or different legislation when it comes up, updating codes, updating ordinances, updating the city's regulations. But that's quickly in a nutshell, that's kind of what we do. We just kind of help with all the other projects and make sure that we help implement the council's direction and goals. Turning it over to Irene.
Thank you. So good evening, Mayor and council members. So here we have the City Clerk's Office core services, which of course includes provide legislative administrative support to the City Council, City Manager, Department Directors, elections, records management, ensure compliance with the Brown Act, Public Records Act, Political Reform Act, and other local, state, and federal statutes, and public information. What these core services really are is just to ensure compliance and that we are responsive and provide transparency. Part of the short-term goals, which we have mostly initiated now, is the coordination of this year's meetings and agendas for the Sonoma County Mayors and Council Members Association, Board of Directors and General Membership meeting, which Cloverdale is the chair for this board, as well as the City Selection Committee for the county. We're working to coordinate sexual harassment prevention training for council members and commissioners, and ethics training. I am currently working on initiating an agenda management platform and application software, which will just make information and meetings more manageable and provide just a better avenue of communication where people can receive information, and just an easier hands-on tool for both the council staff and the public. And then we go back to updating the city's conflict of interest code, currently working with the city manager to update the governance manual, making great progress. Midterm goals: to have a written policy for distribution of tickets to city officials, as well as training with that, conducting some citywide destruction of records just to keep updated, and ensure we have storage, and as we move into the cloud system, just have a better and more efficient process, as well as look into electronic filing of the administration of the FEBC disclosure and economic interest statements. Due to new state law, these actually have to be posted online now. Long-term goals, of course, updating the city's records retention schedule and records management manual, voter outreach, and then we cycle right back into elections for 2022.
Okay, I guess I'm up. We do a lot of things in the community development department. You can see these are all listed here. It's really two different kind of areas. There's planning and there's building. Within the planning and community development, we do a lot of different types of things, including grants and current development and long-range planning. Next slide, please. So for the implementation of the online building permit, I'll start with the punchline. April 16th is our date that we're planning to go live. I did speak to OpenGov today. We've cranked it up to 2 meetings a week. The building permit module is certainly the most complicated, the most interaction with the end user, but we're getting really close. So I'm hoping April 16th. Also in that same vein is the scanning of all the 120 bankers boxes that are now sitting at the courtyard. We're under contract with a company to do that. They came up and grabbed a couple boxes last week to do a test scan, and they're going to be picking up the rest of them in the next couple weeks. That's all going to integrate with OpenGov. It's part of our current scope. It's going to be really great. People can just go on there, type in their address, find out the building permit history. It's going to save us a ton of time and just be really a great customer service tool. Building permit fee update. We've been talking about this one a long time. At this point, I'm waiting for a scope of work from a consultant. Then I hope to include that in this year's budget. Clearly, we need to update that. We're going to have an opportunity to generate more revenue through different fees. We can add on really small fees that will help pay for OpenGov and general plan updates and things like that. So overdue, I'm on it. It's been on here for a while. I'm really motivated to get that one done in this next fiscal year. SB2 grant, we've talked a little bit about this here and there. It was before the council last year. It's underway. We had a kickoff meeting with David and Mark and Rafael and me. At this point, the consultant is reviewing our documents, and I've provided them pictures of some downtown sites. So you're going to be hearing a lot more about this one. Times Square, David and I talk about this one a lot. There's a lot going on there, as the council knows. We've got 3 different parties trying to develop. We've got some drainage issues and other. So we do spend a fair amount of time. We're going to have some progress on the drainage coming up soon, we hope, with a new report that we just got. The South Cloverdale assessment district engineering study. We have all the components except one. We're waiting for the wastewater. Staff has been reviewing those. That will be before the council, hopefully, maybe by the end of this fiscal year. Housing element, we talk about this a lot too. We're excited to report that we're probably going to have 80 or 90% of this grant funded, maybe even 100%. There's a couple grants out there that are they're not competitive. They're based on our population. We've already applied for one, and there's one more we're going for that's the same, that will hopefully cover almost the entire cost of this. Next slide. 6 acres under current planning. We have 6 acres. We made some progress tonight. In fact, that was on the agenda, the consent calendar, the adoption of the pre-annexation agreement. David and I had a meeting with them recently, and they are taking the sewer component very seriously, and we can talk about that more, but they really are. They had wastewater folks in the meeting, and they're pursuing that. Cherry Creek, we'll be talking about this a little bit later. We're close to issuing building permits on this. They're on their 3rd submittal. There is a little bit of funding we can talk about later, and the city's also contributed money. And there's always the ongoing current planning applications, things like Baumgartner, cannabis permits, annexations, the Dry Creek Rancheria, all those things that Rafael really helps out a lot on. Cannabis permits do take a lot of our time issuing and ensuring compliance. So there's that. There's grants. We are, as I mentioned, there's SB2, the LEAP grant, CDBG. Let's see, I wrote a couple others. So we're always on the lookout for grants that seem to make sense for Cloverdale. We spend time investigating them, and if they make sense, we apply for them. And we've been pretty successful in getting a few over the last few years. The small cell ordinance, we talked about this at the last council meeting. We're underway with that to hopefully get that done fairly quickly. We're compiling sample ordinances at this time. Next slide. Sustainability. David mentioned we passed the resolution outlining our sustainability goals. We have done the energy audit, and I was told today that within the next 2 weeks, we'll have the report on that. The affordable housing, I'm sure you've seen over the years, kind of one-off how affordable housing things will come, like agreements or people, talking about different agreements that we have in town, amending those agreements. And so there's a little bit of time there as well. The neighborhood grant program, we've talked about that, and the CDBG program, which we will talk about in a later agenda item. So that will do my report. Thank you.
Okay, so the finance department core services are, of course, accounting services, the accounting general disbursements, so accounts payable essentially, budget preparation, cash management, financial statements, HR support, utility administration services, including billing and the receiving of the cash, risk management. And, essentially we are a support services department for all departments and city council. Next slide. Oh, you already got it. Good job. So the work plan for the finance department, we had in the 0 to 8 months under revenue enhancement to complete the refunding of the former redevelopment bonds. We completed that in November of 2020. That the refunding of the bonds realized a total of $4.5 million in savings over the life of the bond itself. Of that, let's see, of that amount, the savings is distributed across multiple local jurisdictions, including the library, schools, and fire. The city's portion of the savings is approximately $1 million, as well as approximately $500,000 toward our ad valorem tax, or our CalPERS tax is how some people refer to it.
The utility user tax, that also passed in November. That's been brought up a couple of times, but I just wanted to note that that brings in approximately $450,000 per year. Then the TOT audits, we opted to delay that because of COVID and the shutdown of the hotels at the time. And we just decided it was probably best to defer that. And then conduct the financial and compliance audits of the permitted cannabis facilities. We have completed one financial audit and one compliance audit of all of the businesses, and we currently are scheduling the second compliance audit. So each year there'll be one financial and two compliance audits. And those audits are essentially to help the businesses. It's not, we're just making sure that they're doing everything and that they are in compliance with all state and local laws. Next slide. In infrastructure and technology, we implemented the paperless timesheet. That's going well. All employees are now doing the electronic timesheets, no more paper. So that was a big plus, and it's making it a lot easier for our payroll person. OpenGov, we've talked about that a few times today as well. But the implementation is in progress, and staff has already started meeting with some of the department heads over some of the departments, and then we'll continue to meet over the next couple of months to ensure that all of the budgets are implemented. Along with that, so OpenGov will be budget and transparency. Those two things will run in tandem. So the transparency reports we'll be creating as we go through and do the budget. So once the budget is near completion, then we'll have the transparency portion available and in real time on our website. We're really excited about that. Meter reading software, we purchased and initiated the software for reading the water meters. We're still doing some of them manually, not paper and pen anymore, but we're inputting it into an iPad. So it's all electronic, but some of it is not radio read yet. We're still working that out. As they're installed, we're updating the software so that they can be radio reads. Business license administration. This was not one of our prior departmental goals. However, once we realized that the city could recognize the savings, we brought that to City Council. It was approved, and we just sent the professional services agreement to HDL today. So we should be starting on that soon. Next slide. Infrastructure and technology. The airport fuel payment processor and the auto fueling that has been completed. It's up, working. There's been no hiccups at all. I think a lot of that is because we now have a cellular link instead of a landline. We don't have to dial into it. It's all automatically going to a website. So that's working well. The 1920 audit, we just completed that. We onboarded with the new auditor. It was a success. We were happy. I mean, a few little, little things that were different from going from one auditor to the next, but we were able to iron those out. And we will begin that again in mid-October. The biannual operating budget, we've talked about that again. Instead of doing 2 1 years, last year we opted to do 2 years of 1 year budgets, and then next year we'll begin the 2-year process. And I think, continuing on, finance department will continue to complete all the required financial reporting, including utility user tax reporting, the audit, the budget, the ad valorem tax calculations, GAN reporting, mid-year reports, various financial reports for the state and county, including maintenance of efforts and various other reports that are required by the state. We also will continue to request and track grant funds when they're available and applicable. I think that's all that I have for my report.
You're on mute, Chief.
Darn, I thought I was going to get away through the whole presentation on mute. Okay. Police Department core services, clearly the most important core services, public safety service and delivery. We're responsible for police services 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, regardless of fires, floods, or even a pandemic. The police administration, there's a number of things that they provide, but to keep it a little more simple, we oversee the everyday operations of the organization and also set policy. Emergency preparedness and disaster recovery, law enforcement plays a huge role in this, as we'll go on in a minute here, and we'll see exactly some of the accomplishments in the emergency preparedness efforts throughout the last couple of years. The operations support services, this is our communication center. Dispatch is responsible for, on average, about 18,000 calls for service. And they dispatch medical, fire, and all law calls. Animal control services, we briefly touched on this about our community service officer, who also works in a contractual obligation with North Bay Animal Control Services. And we deal with all animal control related calls with their assistance. Field services and investigations. This is our patrol division. Includes 9 sworn staff, and they're responsible for carrying out the community policing philosophy, whether it be patrol or visible in our business district in our neighborhoods. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, looking more into the emergency preparedness and disaster recovery. The Nixle upgrade increased the public information. I think we've all seen that there's been quite an upgrade on that. We've completed that, and that'll continue to go on as we move along with Nixle. The high-low system, we upgraded that in patrol vehicles. That was completed. And participation in the resilient Cloverdale, that is ongoing. We were able to work with the City Hall and get backup generation completed there, and also worked with Katie at the Citrus Fair to get some of their backup generation completed there. And as you will see later tonight in the presentation on the EOP, we were able to develop evacuation zone maps for the city. Next slide, please. Okay, so part of the police department work plan is to increase evidence efficiency for court-ordered property destruction. Currently, what we have to do is we have to drive halfway to Los Angeles to do property destructs. It's very inconvenient. It's time-consuming, a lot of resources in that. So this is one of the things we were looking at, and we're evaluating all the alternatives in this currently. Increased communication center efficiency by upgrading the server. The current server was outdated and regularly in need of service through IT. That is currently in progress, and I think they're working on that as we speak, actually. Increase officer staffing to enhance the department's ability in providing services to the community and to reduce increased overtime. That is not funded. That is something that I certainly will be talking about again. Develop a funding source to increase education efforts and strategy for juvenile vaping concerns. This came up on the radar, and if you recall, we did a letter effective January 1st. We were going to start enforcing the flavored tobacco and vaping devices. We did have some success in that, going business to business, as well as I was starting to begin working with the county on a grant, a state grant, that helps deal with juvenile vaping through a decoy program, much like an ABC alcohol decoy program. Okay, through the midterm, increased records management efficiency for Axon body camera data extraction for court orders and discovery requests. That has been completed. Increase emergency preparedness using IRIMS law to provide instant RIMS data information in the field through iPads and iPhones. That's not funded. We were looking into that and may look into that again. Replace aging police canine vehicle and equipment and reduce increased costs associated with excessive maintenance. That is in progress. We do have a vehicle that was ordered, and we anticipate that vehicle to be here somewhere around April 6th. The only thing that needs to be completed on that once we get it will be the build out. And then looking in the long term, increase emergency preparedness by replacing gas masks for police staff. The current gas masks are too old and are not currently in compliance with proper certification. We were able to complete that, and they came in very beneficial as we were dealing with some issues in Santa Rosa. Increase emergency preparedness efficiency by relocating the repeater site. The current site is not easily accessible and requires consistent attention during emergencies. This has kind of been one of those ongoing things. We currently have a switch that is what we have to use right now. It's somewhat difficult because we always have to go up and take care of that when we switch it over to a generator. We have to constantly fill it with gasoline and make sure it's up and running during emergencies. So that's something we're going to be looking at again to maybe move that repeater site. And then lastly, replace aging police vehicles and equipment, reduce increasing costs associated with excessive maintenance. This is also in progress. If you recall, one of the goals was to try to look at a new police vehicle on an annual basis. So that's something we may be looking at again. So that is the end of my report.
Okay, it looks like Public Works is up. Good evening, everyone. Just to kind of highlight some of the things that engineering, Public Works, and the other departments do. As you see, they're listed here. I don't necessarily want to repeat each one of them, but if you have any questions on any specific one, you can see we've got our work log all cut out for us. Next slide, please. Again, for water department and wastewater department, likewise, but there's our pretty basic functions in terms of operation. So we have the water treatment distribution. We have the wastewater also operations focused. And then there's a few state elements for both departments that are required to be reported weekly, daily, monthly, you name it, we report. Next slide, please. Parks and Recreation, of course, their focus is growing a little bit more because before they would just focus on maintaining landscaping, but now it's become more of a open space management, urban forest management. The city arborist is quite busy with inspections of trees and reporting of trees that are infected and whatnot. So their focus is growing. And then again, I'm kind of handing over to capital improvement programs. So we went through the city park improvement program already adopted by the city council. So I'm asking Hector kind of take on that role of seeing which projects can be developed as time progresses, because we'd like to get some of those things done. Next slide. So department goals, there's a lot of them. Where do I start? I hate to read through each one of these because I'll be on for another 2 hours. I know people will be very mad if I try to do this, but just to kind of highlight some of the things. It's focused a lot on federal projects, federal project delivery, FEMA, FAA, Caltrans through the Federal Highway Program, Cal OES. So a lot of our projects are individual projects dealing with specific things. And if they're funded by the federal government or the state government, there's a lot of management of reporting that goes along with that. So, getting projects delivered in a timely fashion for an engineer, we have our eyes light up when we say, oh, projects, yes, we'll do them great, and then we get bogged down in reality and the requirements of the state and federal government. So some of the things, again, we're working towards a courtyard storage vehicle area, a new building down basically in the courtyard. And we ran into reality there that it's tripled the cost that we had estimated. So we're trying to rethink that one. We got a meeting tomorrow to kind of go over what our alternatives are. Taxiway reconstruction, of course, that's complete, but yet closeout is still happening. FEMA, we got the interim bank repairs, the bank near the intake for the water reservoir, for the water treatment plant was not funded. So we need to figure out how we're going to, reinforce that area. And it's an old levee, even though people think it's a riverbank, it truly is a levee that was established who knows when. It was not engineered, and so there's issues with that. Another one I can highlight is 4th Street reconstruction pavement. We're preparing the bid package for that one. We hope to have that done soon and put it out to bid so we can go ahead and basically reconstruct the pavement. We're talking full depth pavement reconstruction there. And that may initiate other projects as well. We're trying to avoid crossing some certain thresholds. Otherwise, we'll be looking at additional projects dealing with stormwater. Callaway's hazard mitigation plan, that's in progress. And at some point, we'll be rolling out an update for City Council to review. Utility rate study, likewise, that's in progress. Next slide, please. Parks and Recreation, they've got a few specific projects in addition to their routine maintenance. Some of them are dealing with our facilities, Scout Building, interim improvements. Unfortunately, we had an incident to the Scout Building, so that has grown a little bit more. And it actually started some of the things now because we had to get the electrician out there. So in addition to doing the electrical improvements, they're doing some electrical repairs as a result of vandalism. Plaza Restroom, Portland Lou Design. We've done the site layout that was presented to City Council. It's a matter of finding where we hook into the utilities and ordering the device, but that's going to take a little work to develop a bid package to get it out the door. Vandal-proof Eastern Cyclone fence, of course, that has not been started, but it hasn't been an issue lately. So we're kind of hoping that kind of dies down, but at some point we will address getting that cyclone fence a little bit more reinforced. Wastewater, we got a lot of sewer pipeline replacements and lining. That's annual and it's ongoing. Chlorine residual sample station, finally got that almost initiated. It says not started. It was started. We're wrapping it up. We're just waiting for some components, but it's been installed. Sewer pipeline inspection, of course, that's been completed, and I've sent out several violation notices to people who were illegally connected to their storm water connection or basically downspouts into sewers. Water feasibility for Cherry Creek, that's undergoing. We're trying to figure out how to squeeze a second reservoir at the Cherry Creek sites. Water resources engineering started. We haven't started that one. We will need to start that soon. Purchase of a towable generator for School Street Pump Station, that's been completed and is now ready to go. Next slide. Midterm GIS mapping, we're trying to get everything, all our maps produced in geo-reference so that we have more exacting locations and we can start, instituting a more of a management system for our infrastructure. So that's underway. FAA, environmental studies for infield drainage areas, that's in progress right now. We're trying to figure out what project we're going to put in to improve drainage for the airport. And once we figure out where exactly are we going to put in the drain lines, then we will be proceeding with the environmental assessments. Courtyard emergency power, that has not started yet. Of course, we're eager to get that going, but it's still out there. City alleyway pavement plans, as you know, some of our alleyways are unpaved, dirt alleys, and I need to do some sort of improvements. We haven't started that yet. I did ask the county to share with me their standards for road, unpaved road sections so that I at least can get that going with a contractor once we get that information. Parks and Recreation, of course, there's a lot to do yet. The Plaza restroom we just covered, Citrus Fair Drive. That's a good one because it needs a lot of help. Our Citrus Fair Drive, our principal entrance to the city, is meager. It's a Caltrans standard design, and it looks like it. So we're trying to make that a little bit more appealing. Maybe put on a road diet because I don't see the need for a 4-lane expressway stretching less than a fifth of a mile. For park trail repaving, we haven't started that yet. Just waiting for funding. Likewise, at for park scoreboard installation. Again, it's a funding issue, and the basketball court installation. Again, a funding issue. A wastewater Shaham pump station feasibility study. I haven't initiated that yet, but we are looking into. We got it into the CIP, and I am looking to get to Shaham pump station or lift station, more properly said, into a more of a properly designed lift station. Right now, it's just a series of manholes that we pump out of. So that's not a very good design. Pavement sealing of the wastewater treatment plant. Of course, Jay wants to keep that place looking top notch, and he keeps it great. So that's going to be coming up. Wastewater treatment plant SCADA system. Basically, the wastewater treatment plant does not have a SCADA system. So this is a ground up SCADA system that will be able to remote control a lot of the functions of the plant. Wastewater treatment plant emergency generator. There is one there now. It functions well, but we will need to be replacing it because it's been there now for 15 years. So that's one of the things we need to keep an eye on. Biosolids removal program. We're in the process of putting together a bid package for that one so that we can get that going. And it's really a 5-year program. Evaluation of a redundant or replacement water treatment plant generator for the water facility. Again, that we do have a generator there. It's showing its age. We've had a lot of maintenance issues with it. And I'm trying to put in some redundant generator there so that at least we can have a backup in case of an emergency, because the last thing you need is not to have a generator available to pump the water up the hill. Water meter upgrade, of course, Susie talked about that, but we've got the guys going out and doing some replacements. SCADA system expansion into the reservoirs and pump stations for the water treatment plant. Right now, the water treatment plant only has the function of the treatment plant itself and is not been rolled out into the distribution system. And that's a key function that needs to be observed. Right now, we just have mechanical switches to turn off and turn on pumps when necessary. Cherry Creek Reservoir design, again, that's been covered. Next. And then we got the FEMA crosstown drainage hazard, the long-term goal. Of course, we're working through the hazard mitigation plan. Hopefully FEMA will help us fund that. There's several components to it, and FEMA, the federal government, will do hard infrastructure replacement, but they will not do the softer elements of this. So, putting in the pipeline, yes. Other things other than that, no. So that's like a multi-design and multi-funding function there, and we still need to figure that one out. The FAA infield design, again, I covered that. Hopefully we can kick off construction soon, probably not this fiscal year, but the following fiscal year. Signal light backup battery for First Street in Cloverdale, that would be ideal. It hasn't been started. Refurbished baseball field lights at the city park. Again, that's a wish list item. The lights there right now are quite aged, quite energy intensive, and so we hope to get those replaced with newer fixtures. Infield install field lights at Ferger Park right now. Ferger Park is pretty dark. It's not well lit, and so we're hoping to put some key lighting. Not necessarily to, I don't want to necessarily light up our skies. That's not the point of this. This is more low profile, low key lighting. Replace Ferger Park playground structure. Of course, all our playground structures do age as any infrastructure, and at some point they become too much maintenance and too much of a hazard, or I would say too much. When they become a hazard, it's time to replace them. And then again, this has already been covered, but it's been pushed out to a future term. It's just the cyclone fence. Next slide, please. For the wastewater, of course, this is the Advanced Treatment Facility Engineering Study. At some point, the wastewater treatment plant will be needed to be upgraded significantly. In fact, replaced is the better term, and to advanced treatment. And at that point, I need to be prepared. So I'm trying to initiate an engineering study to figure out what our options are, not only for treatment. Treatment is pretty well established and what's available and the best way to treat it. But more is, what do you do with the water once you treat it? Because the state still treats it as a waste, and a lot of places, a lot of locations, especially in Southern California and Australia, they are reusing that water. It is a resource, and it's used primarily for irrigation, but I foresee the future of direct potable reuse. And so that's something that's a factor that we need to factor into our designs. Water treatment plant, vehicle storage building. Again, all our vehicles, both at the courtyard and at the plants, they sit outside, and that really beats our vehicles up, especially our rolling stock and some of our equipment. So I'm trying to get them under a roof for the most part. And so we're working on getting that done, but these are long-term goals to get them done. Water system security enhancements tied to SCADA. Again, as we roll out SCADA, especially the distribution side, security will be a big part of that. Water treatment chemical tank replacement. So we have some day tanks there and long-term storage tanks for chemicals for treatment. Those do need to be replaced. They've been sitting in the same location, the same plant for a number of years, since the year mid-90s, and to pull them out of there is impossible. So we're going to have to get a little creative in terms of redesigning the roof at the treatment plant to be able to cherry pick them out of there, and they're quite large, so you can't just roll them out. Vista View Pump Station rehabilitation. Right now, the Vista View Pump Station is an old facility that has been abandoned, but we haven't given up the site because I want to get it back in, because it's important to have a secondary pump station for firefighting, and also just to have a secondary source of water for the hill up there. Preliminary engineering for water treatment plant sludge drying bed. Right now, our sludge drying bed is showing its age. It's a little cracked up, but it's still functioning. But I'd like to get a more modern one parallel to it, so that we can alternate sludge drying beds, so we can allow one to dry, fully dry, rather than keep refilling it with discharged water. Engineering study for filter number 3 rehabilitation, that's coming up. All our filters need rehabilitation. We've already done number 1, and we just completed number 2, so number 3 is coming up. And we need to get that done, but it's the newest one. So it's the one that we can wait a few more months to do. And then preliminary engineering for well number 7 and 8 rehabilitation. Those wells, when they were installed, they were producing a lot more water. We're starting to see reductions in their ability to produce water. So wells, as in any well anywhere, eventually it needs to be redeveloped. And so we'll see if we can redevelop these wells. If that's not feasible, if it looks like it needs to be replaced, then we'll switch up and do a replacement program. Next slide. Okay, I think I'm done.
You are. Thank you, City Engineer Rincon, for your overview, and thank you to senior staff for your overview of your work plan. At this point in the presentation, just want to talk a little bit about the top budget themes that staff recognizes came out of that work plan. And what you see on this slide are really the top 6 budget themes that are reflected in the work plan and the key initiatives, programs, and priorities that staff has provided and council has given us direction to undertake. And those include, revenue enhancement. I think a lot of those measures were reflected in the actions taken by the finance director and the finance department. Housing and homelessness, reflective of the work that our community development director and assistant city manager are planning to undertake with the update of the downtown commercial zoning district, the TOD zoning district, our housing element, as well as the Southwest planning area. You saw a number of key initiatives that were led up by our police chief, Chief Ferguson, in the realm of public safety and emergency preparedness. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that of the later agenda item. A number of accomplishments in regards to infrastructure improvements, projects that have been longstanding were able to be completed. Likewise, in technology, we've undertaken a number of key upgrades, again, with our server and implementation of OpenGov, electronic timesheets. And then last but not least, planning and sustainability. So these reflect what staff saw as the top budget themes that came out of the work plan. And I think this is something that council may want to spend some time on and just review and determine whether you continue to view these as top budget themes. Ultimately, it's these themes that inform your budget goals, which then supports the work plan that would be funded through the budget, and is what generates the specific initiatives, which then requires funding and staffing allocation as part of the next fiscal year budget that council would review. So what we have on next slide, Irene, is a set of proposed budget goals, budget goal statements, really, that again provide more specific language around those budget themes. And again, staff's recommendation is that you review the goals and you update and modify them as you determine is needed, and whether to continue them and or add key strategies and objectives to further enable their implementation and identify ways in which we meet key objectives so we can show success in obtaining that goal. At this point, really want to open it up for council's discussion. Ultimately, we want to get your feedback on this proposed budgeting approach with respect to having it be a work plan based approach. And ultimately, it's the staff's here to serve the council and your priorities. What we've attempted to do is really identify, what are mandates, what are requirements, but what are also key projects and initiatives and activities that carry out the council's priorities. So we'll kind of leave it there, council, mayor, and would like to open it up for your discussion.
All right. Why don't we've all taken notes. We have a bit of a presentation that we've heard and need to digest for a second. Why don't we go ahead and take a 7-minute recess? People can bio break as needed. We'll come back. We'll get into discussion and deliberation from there. So I'll see everybody at 7:49. Thank you. Excellent. Welcome back, Vice Mayor. We'll go ahead and get started. So where we left off, city staff have given a killer presentation on their goal summary, kind of what they've accomplished so far, what we can expect in the immediate, the not so immediate, and the long term. Council has been taking notes and is prepared to ask some questions. Then we'll go ahead and open it up to the public and continue from there. So with that being said, which of my fellow council members would like to kick us off?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'll be happy to start if nobody else wants to go first.
Please, Councilmember Walter, go right ahead.
Okay, so David, I have a couple questions and directed particularly to the department heads. So let me just go over them. First of all, with the economic recovery funds that we will be getting, how do you view those funds being sprinkled throughout these goals, number one? And then for Irene, in the city clerk's position, I believe it's on page 81 of the report pertaining to long-term goals being, let me just say here. Page 81, long-term goals, 16 to 24 months. I guess the question is, how are we going to accomplish that
while we keep pace with the day-to-day needs of the city clerk. We lost Susan, that used to work for us on a part-time basis. So I'm concerned that these long-term goals are really important, but I don't know that we have the staff to do that. Quite honestly, I think Irene is busy, running around taking care of everything else. And then for Kevin, I think that was on page 83. You had said updating building permit fees, and you're saying here that they've been in place since 1999. Would that include an update in the city's, in the school fees as well? Would the school district get part of those fees, or is that strictly for the city? And then lastly, on the TOT audit, Susie, we canceled it, and I didn't hear you say whether there was a rescheduled date for that. And that's all the questions I have for now.
Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll parse those out a little bit. David, why don't you take the first, Melanie, am I interrupting here? Okay, David, why don't you go ahead and take the first one? The second question was then addressed to Irene. It had to do with your long-term goals. The third question went towards Kevin. It had to do with the permit building fees. And the final question was directed towards Susie and the TOT audit. So David, why don't you kick us off, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor, and happy to respond to those questions. All good questions, and certainly front of mind is the American Rescue Act that was approved by Congress today. It made its way through the House, Senate, back to the House, and I think it's going to be on the president's desk for signature real quick here. That act is expected to provide approximately $1.6 million in direct relief to the city of Cloverdale, and it will be allocated in 2 tranches, at least based on information in the act, of which approximately 50% of it, or about $800,000, should be allocated in the current fiscal year if the current 60-day timeline holds true. And then the remainder, the other 50%, next year in approximately May or June of fiscal year 21-22. With respect to the use of the funds, my recommendation is that staff bring back an agenda item for council's discussion with some what I call buckets of funding categories that council may want to prioritize that funding within. Certainly, as your city manager, I'm gonna suggest that you look at placing some of those funds in your savings account, and when I say that, I mean your reserve accounts, but also recognize the importance of identifying where those funds could be put to the greatest use. And so, it'll be an opportunity for council to identify whether you want to fund, infrastructure projects, whether you want to backfill some of the economic losses that the city experienced, or support some of your service organizations that have provided critical services during the pandemic. We'll have to make sure that any intended uses does comply with the act. But I think that's the strategy that we pursue, is to identify some different buckets for council's consideration, and have council prioritize the use of those funds, in accordance with your key priorities, and in line with, I think, my recommendation would be in line with your budget goals.
Excellent. Thank you, David. The next question was geared towards Irene. Your long-term goals, please.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Councilmember Walter, for just acknowledging the work kind of behind the scenes there. As far as the long-term goals, that's also part of why some of my midterm goals have been implemented, especially with the implementation of this agenda peak management paperless system. It's basically to streamline my time. Staff does a great job of trying to meet deadlines, but it'll just help streamline the process in the way and save time in getting the efforts to just simply putting an agenda together. And of course we have council, and then we have our subcommittees and the planning commission. So it just adds up. And, let's say for any one agenda, even though it's technically done, I'm spending 4 hours just finalizing it, where having this system, it's a one-stop shop. And in our finance, admin, and police subcommittee meetings, we're constantly talking about technology and ways to be more efficient. And because I have been without staff, it has also been just to be cognizant of funds, and due to the pandemic and just this uncertainty over the past year, I figured, why not put it towards something that will not only help us now, but also in the future. Let's see, our records retention manual, these are just, honestly, items that haven't been looked at. I believe the last time it was updated was in 2008, and it follows state guidelines. So we really need to look into modifying it for ourselves and the city, and just again into the modern age. They're basically just building blocks to be able to create a more efficient process overall for the entire city. That way, in the long run, as things come up, then it just allows staff to be more flexible and be able to do more. With the election, that's a main long-term goal. Unfortunately, I don't have a choice in the matter. So from mid-July to pretty much November, I'm in it to the end, and just to be able to help, of course, the candidates, and then provide information and meet the necessary requirements. So those will be my goals no matter what.
Well, thank you. I just don't want to see long-term goals that can't be achieved, because and this is for all department heads, we're bogged down in the day-to-day operation, and we can never get to those long-term goals, and that can is just kicked down the road in perpetuity. So I know at one point we had discussed having a list of qualified retirees from city functions that we can call from time to time to come in and help with special projects. And I know that's entirely up to David and the funding capabilities to pay them. But I just want to make sure that the long-term can be achieved at some point. Thank you, Irene.
Yeah.
All right, Kev, you're up.
Well, Councilmember Walter, the short answer is no, it wouldn't affect what the school collects. The school establishes their own fee through their Nexus study, looking forward to how many units are built and where they are with their facilities. So it would just be purely for the city's fee collection.
Okay, I thought so. Thank you.
Susie, regarding the TOT audit.
Yes, we have not rescheduled the TOT audit. When the time comes, we will bring it to council for approval.
Okay, because the last TOT audit we had done was quite a few years ago. So we would also be ordering the good years when the logging establishments were open, not just the last few. So, but whenever, I just wanted to say thank you.
Absolutely. All right, thanks, Councilmember Walter, city staff for answering his questions. Councilmember Bagby, would you like to go next?
Oh, sure. Yeah, and of course, I wanted to let Gus go first, and he stole my thunder because off the bat asked my question. But I know, out of deference, I was going to let you go first, and that was my mistake. So, but I just wanted to I thank David for his approach tonight. I know it's long, but you told us what you were going to tell us. You told us, and then you told us what you told us. So that's a long-standing, great way to communicate. So I really appreciate it. And I just wanted to, congratulate David and senior staff. I mean, one of the items that we really identified as needing to address was our revenue stability, and the fact that the our residents recognized that's that just was essential for planning purposes, for public safety. It shows confidence in our city staff and the budgetary choices that we're really making. So I think that's that you deserve congratulations. I see that the cannabis revenue is also a way that it's kind of enhancing our revenue. And then of course, COVID hit. So, but we are, as much of a budgetary challenge as it is, I remind myself we're better off than a lot of other cities. We're not seeing the, cliff-like drop off due to lost, TOT that we've grown to be dependent on like other cities have. So I think it shows it's a testament to our, prudent fiscal management over the years. And I think Councilmember Wilcher is responsible for directing that policy, and city staff certainly is too for executing it. So, the position that we are in now, though, we have a little bit of breathing room, but it's because of, good conservative fiscal policy. So I really want to, congratulate the city manager and city staff for, putting us on a very good footing, a lot better than some of our neighbors, but though we still have to, continue to be prudent. So I'd also like to congratulate the staff for just continuing to achieve your goals during what's been a very difficult time, having to pivot how we literally work together day to day, not seeing each other in person, adopting new technology. And that's not just Zoom. That's, saying we're going to go for Open Gov. We're going to go for digitizing our operations that, just weren't a priority before. So I think that you deserve a lot of credit for the accomplishments that you've made under these conditions and really being able to, pivot effectively and maintain really good operations. So I'd say, congratulations to all of you. I'm so looking forward to the agenda management software. Irene, just tonight when I was emailing with one of our constituents about the issue, and I was having to go back and forth and copy and paste from the Agenda Center link, and it was like, oh, this is just stupid. So I'm looking forward to being able to work more effectively and get better information out to our constituents with that system. So this will take me to my questions. The first write-off is for Irene. Maybe I could just take them one at a time too, because some of these are really quick. What does, on page 82, what does a distribution of tickets mean? I don't understand what that terminology means. Maybe you explained it, but I didn't get it.
Oh yes. So again, it's a policy that I would like to have. It's just a written policy which establishes the procedure for distribution of tickets. When we're back to non-COVID time, the council is privy, and as well as the city is privy to, tickets for, let's say, the Citrus Fair events, and it just creates a cleaner process, and it's equal, and it clarifies it. It makes it clear on.
Oh, I wasted hours on that. So okay,
that's are distributed, and just that not one preference over the other.
Thank you. Okay, that makes sense now. In that, I needed context for that. Cool. And then, and this is just really an FYI too for Susie. So now that we've passed that utility tax renewal, what is the audit schedule? The Citizens Advisory Group schedule? When is the next one going to be held, and what's the time period? Does it change at all, or does it put us on a new track?
It does not change. Well, does it change? You know what? I honestly don't know the answer. I'll have to find it.
Maybe we can just, and the answer would be great at the Police Finance Administration. I just give you a heads up that I had a question about that. And then also probably it's going to be answered at the subcommittee, and that'll be fine. And this is for the chief. And this is regarding the interest in seeking funding for juvenile vaping. I guess what I'm going to want to see along with that and along with ideas as far as going out for funding is, we know that our neighboring city, Healdsburg, has a 20, you can't sell tobacco to anybody under 21 years of age. And I just would be interested in hearing what the result, if that's been moving the needle on youth vaping and adoption or not, and just like, what's been effective in other cities and what's not before we, go after funding. I just want to hear some places where it's been effective. That was my main concern. And then for engineering, I'd love to hear the word road diet and citrus fair, but I'm a little concerned because I know that somewhere in one of those boxes at the courtyard is a plan from the Urban Land Institute. And, Gus, back me up on this. We have like a free $1,000, or plan that would probably cost us in the tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was done for us by the Urban Land Institute about 10 years ago, and nobody can predate Gus and me. So I'm throwing out a challenge for staff, and maybe in a cash prize of some kind, maybe citrus fair tickets, I don't know, to find that damn report, because I know it exists, and it's a plan to put citrus fair on a road diet and actually create a linear park between downtown and the train station. They also had some really great ideas as far as TOD and parking for downtown. So, I mean, I want to help us move forward with that, but it would be great if we could find the plan that, as a basis that's already been provided for us, that represents, thousands and thousands of dollars of consulting time. So, those were but other than that, I was very pleased with what I've heard, and I think that we're in a good footing moving forward. I guess the only kind of outstanding issue would be if we are going to continue having revenue enhancement goals. What does that look like now that we've had the utility tax renewal, and what do we need to concentrate on for the future? But that pretty much concludes my comments. I just want to thank senior staff for an exhaustive report and a great job. Thank you.
Mayor Turner, if I can just address Councilmember Bagby's final comment or question relative to revenue enhancement. Actually, what we'd like to do is bring forward a presentation that was received by the Finance, Admin, and Police Subcommittee that was prepared by Management Partners, which provided a comprehensive set of long-term strategies for the full council's consideration. It was actually the direction of the subcommittee to bring that forward as a presentation, and I identified that in the agenda report was schedule a financial forecast / budget presentation in late March, early April. Our finance director is working with Management Partners on scheduling their availability. And we'd like to do that before the budget workshop, because, of course, we think the American Relief or Rescue Act does provide some immediate near-term financial resources that are going to be critical to, backfilling some of the economic losses and supporting us as we continue to manage our way through the pandemic. But I think we still have some long-term systemic financial issues that really need council to consider and look at and start implementing programs now that will help offset the impact of some of those financial implications that are forecast, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. So, looks good. We look good now. I think the financial benefits of the relief is great, but there's just some real structural financial issues that aren't unique to Cloverdale necessarily, but that we want to be mindful of and and it may help inform your decisions about, again, some of that relief money. Where do you want, what bucket do you want to put it in? Just give you a different perspective on where you might want to invest some of those proceeds. So with staff very much wants to bring forward that presentation, and hopefully that will help kind of answer your question more in depth.
And Melanie, did I understand correctly that some of the other questions, while you wanted to make sure they were voiced, you anticipate answers at the next Finance, Police, and Admin Subcommittee?
Yeah, they're kind of just more heads up questions that, when we do get them assigned to, I'm sure they're going to be assigned to that committee that just, that I'll just give you a heads up tonight. Those are the questions I'm going to ask. That way you're ready. It's part of your presentation to the subcommittee. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Great.
Any other questions at this time? Vice Mayor Cruz, please.
Yes, I really also want to thank David and the staff for a thorough explanation to all of us. And I especially want to thank Jose for always being available, not only to the staff, but to council. It is essential for us not to make major mistakes that cost pretty penny to the city, and he keeps us on our tiptoes. So thank you, Jose. In terms of one aspect that David mentioned is communication. And I have noticed that that has definitely improved, at least with me, in terms of having a standing meeting. And I hope everybody is having a standing meeting with David on a weekly basis, because that really helps clarify any doubts that may come about, and also discussion of situations that are not necessarily agendized, but are important for city management and the function with the public. And I would like, as Melanie, is not a question, it's just an observation, heads up, on what kinds of things I would like to see in the future is for the objectives and goals to go beyond what is the communication between city staff and council. It has to be also on programming that would somehow stimulate greater engagement with the public. And the only way that we really get greater engagement with the public is by establishing some sort of program. So, Kevin, I would like to see in your goals, when it comes to community development, some of the people aspect of development. And perhaps we don't have the staff to do that, but somehow we need to start doing that. Because the greater participation of our constituents is going to be based on how we pull them in to the conversation. And, the chamber has had some very good initiatives, and I applaud Nina for all the effort. It's like tireless effort on her part to get people interested in the activities of the city, in stimulating economic activity in the city, and so on. But I think we also need to do some of that. And so, yeah, I was looking at how can we invite our constituents to be more present in our life, and not necessarily in terms of the complaining, which is also necessary, but also in terms of hearing their voices on some good suggestions that will help implement some of our objectives. Then I have a question for Irene. In terms of required training that you're organizing for all of us, not only on the staff, but on council, does the city have to provide a report to any external body on compliance with required trainings?
To report out, technically no, and Jose can back me up, but we do have to make sure that you are in compliance in case we are asked. We do have to pull the proof of the required training.
if we are asked by whom?
By the state, or if anyone from the public wishes to view it and they want to file a complaint with the state.
Okay.
Either way.
All right. And then for Susie, something that I'm concerned about, and I have mentioned this to David in the past, is in terms of allocation of funding for consultants and on unexpected expenses that may come about, either due to emergencies, due to things like what happened at the park, unexpected vandalism and so on. Is there an item for that? Is there a line item of reserves towards that kind of situation? And I don't know if it's Susie or David, but both of you. That's one of my my questions.
Do you want me to answer that? We don't currently have a contingency line item for the general fund. We certainly could add that, but it's a little difficult when you're already budgeting. Like last year, we budgeted almost $1 million deficit. So where's the contingency going to come from? There's really no space for that. But in water and wastewater, we do have a contingency fund that I think is 1% of their total budget for things that might come up.
David, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I'll add to our finance director's response, and I think it's accurate to say, it's challenging when we're working under an operational deficit. But what we do have, and what the council has been very prudent at supporting, is our reserves. So we have reserve accounts. We have an emergency reserve, which we've been building up annually. And we have a number of other reserve accounts for equipment, for leave, and that's all, again, part of the budget. And those reserves are intended in part to address those one-time impactful events. And, again, because the past council and the current council has been supportive of putting those funds in to those reserve accounts, it's building your individual savings accounts up to be able to be better prepared when those unexpected events come forward. It doesn't put us in a devastating position, which very well could be if we didn't have those reserve balances. And so that's why I made the comment to Councilmember Walter about relative to some of this relief funds. As your city manager, I'm certainly going to suggest bolstering some of those reserve accounts with at least a portion of those funds, again, to prepare ourselves for those unexpected events, because they do happen. And we want to be able to have enough reserves or savings account to be able to respond to those events when they do arise, and be able to withstand them and address them in a resilient way. So again, it's been because of the council's prudent policy development and then staff carrying it out that we've been able to build the reserves back up. And my hope is council will continue to support that.
Okay, thank you. And then I just have one final comment, and that is to thank the chief for his leadership. It does show that you have been very engaged with all the programs in the community. I personally thank you for responding to me even on weekends when we have had situations that we couldn't get anybody else to answer questions. And that is very important, because that open link of communication is essential for the safety of the community. And one thing that perhaps I would like to ask is, does it cost more to have food patrol in the city, or is it just part of the assigned duties for officers on their shift?
Yeah, it does not cost more. It is part of the assigned duties, and specifically, it's part of their assigned shifts to foot patrol in the plaza as well as the business district.
Yes, and do they have bikes? I mean, I don't want to spend any more money, but
I hear you talking, Vice Mayor. I hear you talking. We can certainly have a couple of nice ones.
You know, in Puerto Rico, they had roller skates too. So just
oh,
let
that's
you know.
right. That's
And Mark,
right.
nobody asked you. We're back with the Vice Mayor. So.
Roller skates. I don't know. I don't want that liability on the city. Okay.
We don't have any patrol bicycles.
Okay, because it's not only the business district, but also throughout the neighborhoods. So,
yeah.
All right. So those are my concerns. I'm very pleased with the way things are going, and I really appreciate Kevin's preparation on some of the very difficult issues that the city has been facing, and I definitely appreciate all the research that he has done to be able to provide up-to-date information to all of us to make sound and intelligent decisions. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Vice Mayor Cruz. Councilmember Lands, any questions or comments before I take my turn?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll go fast. I like going near the end so that a lot of my questions have already been answered. First off, like everyone else, I want to thank all the leaders tonight. It's nice coming into this new and seeing achievable goals and completed written on most of them or in progress. That's a big achievement in itself, and I thank you guys all for that and working hard. I look forward to the next budget workshop that I can be a part of because there's things that I would obviously like to add to this, but my questions are very minimal. The first one, probably for Susie, the cannabis revenues, how are they spent and are they earmarked for certain areas? Because I think that they were back in the day, but I don't know how it turned out.
So the revenues are not necessarily earmarked for anything, except that we do pay for the audits. So the audits, those come out of the revenues. The rest of it is spent on whatever council deems that it should be spent on right now. It's in a savings account.
Okay. Thank you.
And maybe to add a little to that, Councilmember, I think that the cannabis ends up being the permit fees versus the tax, right, Susie? And the permit fees, their cost recovery, they're paying for what it takes to administer that program. And then you have your tax, which is general fund, which that's where you decide where to spend that.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Lance, if I may, use a follow-up to your question, and this is also going to Susie and David. I thought that at one point there was supposed to be some allocation for education to youth. That I think that's what Todd and I are thinking about.
Yes, thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. That's what I was getting at is I was under the impression it was earmarked for education and prevention of some sort. And so I was wondering how that fit into our general fund. Or if it was not, it sounds like it's not.
I don't believe that it's notated anywhere that it's earmarked for anything. However, council can choose to spend the funds however they would like to spend them.
And if I can, I'd like to add that we, particularly Kevin and myself, have had conversations with business owners of our local cannabis businesses who have made requests to consider, modifications in the tax structure, and we're going to just start having a more detailed conversation with our cannabis businesses about the cannabis tax and the revenue that is generated. And I expect that will be something we report back to the Finance, Admin, and Police Subcommittee and ultimately Council. One of the initiatives that I think would at least has been preliminarily discussed is opportunities to use some of the revenue to market and promote Cloverdale in our business community. which includes our cannabis businesses, and maybe coupled with that would be opportunities for educating the community, including our student population about cannabis. So that's something that we just really, as of last week, started to have a conversation about, and ultimately I think it will come to council with some recommendations and alternatives on how council may want to look at the local cannabis tax revenue.
Thank you, sir. I was looking at Chief Ferguson's list of unfundeds as well and thought that it might help a lot in that direction. My next question, I think this would be for Kevin. Kevin, what is the neighborhood grant program? I'm unfamiliar with it, and I apologize for not knowing.
Sure, no problem, Councilmember Lance. It was established a couple budget cycles ago, and it's just a small amount of money that the council put aside. I can't remember the exact amount, and it's 2,000. It's 5,000. Okay, so
5,000.
Originally, it was for, and it still is, people who want to plant trees or do small beautifications in their neighborhood. We left the guidelines a little bit loose so people could be creative. I can send you what the guidelines are and you can fully understand what it is. But more recently, we have used some of that funding to help with utility bill relief for folks who are falling behind on their water and sewer.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. The next one would be for, let's see here, for Mark. When we do paving, like you had 4th Street repaving on the list, do we look at the water sewer lines, maybe putting in purple pipe in certain areas where it would be beneficial, anything like that before we repave? To see?
Absolutely. We actually put out the word, not only for our own utilities, but for PG&E and the communication companies to tell them all, hey, there's going to be a 5-year moratorium. So take a look at your utilities and just, the scope this couple of blocks. And if they have nothing to replace in that interim, that's fine. But if they do, they have to get it done before we initiate repavement.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you, sir. That's the last questions I have that weren't answered, and I look forward to our next budget workshop.
Thank you, Mr. Lands. It was brought to my attention that Mr. Bob Cox is in the audience with his hand up, and I'm happy to have him come into the panel, Irene. I know he has history with the council and may wish to add some input, particularly on some of the cannabis tax stuff like that. So again, happy to have him come into the panel if he has any questions or comments. Mr. Cox, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, I don't have anything on reference to cannabis. This is in reference to Melanie's, Commissioner Bagby's, Councilmember Bagby's remembrance of the Citrus Fair Greenway, as we wanted to talk about it then. This was brought to the council in 2011-12 under City Manager Nina Rigor. And I think there's probably no one in City Hall today that had anything to do with that then. But it was in reference to taking one side of that Citrus Fair Drive, which is 4 lanes for less than a quarter of a mile, and turning half of it into a greenway parkway situation. So that's about when the records would be 2011, early 2012. That's all I have to offer, but thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it. Mr. Walter, please. And then Councilmember Bagby, you can go next. Absolutely.
Melanie, I did find that report, and it is from 2009, and it's a TLD Marketplace report. And if I can figure how to forward it to you on this Windows platform, I will do that. But it's on page 19, and there's actually, it was presented to us January 7th, 2010. So I will get that to you, okay? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate the collaboration. That's super cool. Yeah, Councilmember Bagby, please.
Yeah, just one more blast from the past that Councilmember Lands brought up. I just, I think Councilmember Walter and former Councilmember Cox can probably back me up on this as well. It is that the cannabis revenue, while it goes to our general fund, there has been a tradition or procedure that a significant percentage of it goes to police operations, and the mule being one of the items that it was dedicated to. So that's something that has been happening in the Police Finance Administration Subcommittee before my tenure started there. It was, continued and handed down to me from Councilmember Walter, and it is definitely one of the priorities when we are when we're engaging in the budget process. So I just wanted to let you know that much of that income is dedicated to the police department.
Excellent, thank you. All right, any other comments or questions?
Should we call any other council members that have served for Cloverdale?
Yeah. If Councilmember Paula is out there, call in 1-800-COUNCIL meeting.
He's typically on YouTube. He's only about 30 seconds behind this. If I get a text, I'll put him on. He's probably making dinner right about now. Anyhow, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I'll make it very brief. Staff, you did a killer job with this report. I really like the idea of transitioning towards our outlook being over a 24-month period for what the goals are, but continuing to budget a one-year cycle there within. I understand the desire to move to a 2-year budget subsequently, but for the time being, I think this model has been very valuable. One of the things I like about it is you can see the cause and effect between some of the more immediate midterm goals and how they play into the long-term goals. If I could just offer a brief example, Irene gave us some significant testimony that her short-term and midterm goals are all in order to improve efficiency so that the ability to even reach those long-term goals becomes more feasible. And if you have this council member's particular opinion, that's exactly where I want thinking to be, is what can I do to set myself up today to make tomorrow easier and better? I do recognize that it sets us up for the same kind of conundrum of to be more efficient means I want more from you. And so please always consider work-life balance as we move forward through these initiatives and stuff. The only thing I wanted to ask about, and I find myself reflecting on the top budget themes slide. It is page 104 in our packet, I do believe, page 46 if you're just on the report for this particular item. And what I wonder is if possibly in public safety and emergency preparedness, possibly technology, possibly infrastructure, or maybe a combination of the three, have we started to work in preventative risk mitigation? So one of the things that came to my attention at a recent subcommittee, and we just gave the money out in the consent calendar today, was the tasers and the body cams for the officers. And if I remember correctly, some of the main motivator of this is we had gone beyond its service reliability, and therefore we're no longer insured because of that. And that seemed a bit reactive. Now, I could be misunderstanding that, and I'm totally open to that. The other thing I saw came up in that regard as well, I believe had to do, again, sorry, I hate to pick on you, Chief, it sticks out, but the gas masks. There was a comment in your report that the gas masks were of an age that they were no longer compliant, right? So again, what are we looking at our goals and our themes, and do we see a natural place to start baking in preventative risk mitigation? Because I know we've resolved those problems before we had an issue. Should I consider us getting lucky? Is that pretty industry standard for stuff like this, where we do have to be reactive to a certain extent? And do you guys see a palpable way that we can start to work in some of that in more of a preventative way? And really, that's my only question. I realize it's a little bit bigger than what you might be able to answer right now before us. The main takeaways is I'm loving this 2-year goal structure. I look forward to the budget workshop where we can start to see what we can do to assign resources to some of these goals. but that was something lingering. Again, just kind of something that I titled. It's just the self-titled concept of preventative risk mitigation.
Mayor, if I can to respond to your question, and I think it's a very important and a very valid question. And risk management is something that we take very seriously. And a lot of risk management strategies are really made on a day-to-day operational basis. Things like making sure our vendors and contractors get insurance, making sure our staff is trained appropriately and has the right tools to be able to deal with some of the challenges that present them. But I think what you're driving at might be more akin to some of the bigger investments that are going to be before council. And what I'm thinking of, for example, is you're going to be taking up what I'm going to call the rate study 2.0 for our water and wastewater system. And I think one of the narratives that comes out of that discussion is funding key infrastructure improvements, and some of those improvements are from staff's perspective, and I think Mark really can underscore this, is that we are mitigating the potential risk of losing our chlorine contact system or a pump failure because it's experiencing it's nearing its useful life, and so that's going to be a critical policy discussion for council. Is what's your risk comfort around funding some of these really critical infrastructure components? And it becomes a policy decision for council in terms of when you want to make those investments, based on what the useful life is, whether you want to extend the life of a piece of equipment, whether you want to purchase new and have a redundant system, or build a complete replacement of the existing. And I think that's going to be probably where council is going to weigh in most on this preventative maintenance and risk management issue. Is going to be on the funding of infrastructure improvements. You can kind of see that in the area of streets, for example, where you get to a certain point, if you don't make those investments in the maintenance, it gets to a point where you have to completely replace a road section. And so, and then it starts to accrue additional liability to the city because it becomes a safety concern, a safety hazard. It impacts how we do business and so forth. So that's kind of a long-winded answer to your question, but I think that's where a lot of those projects in the public works and city engineer realm really tie into that long-term kind of risk management perspective.
And then I see Councilmember Bagby's hands up, and I'll go to you in just a second. One quick little follow-up anecdote, if you will, or just a thought that came to my mind. So it's a completely unfiltered one, if you will, is I wonder if there's a appropriate section on the agenda for different items that might talk about the risk that's involved. For example, I'll just go back to the renewed MOU for the tasers and the body cam. What might have been the risk had I decided, nah, I'm not feeling that? Or what might have been the risk had I said, no, you need to scale that back? And I realize that we walk into a little bit of an uncomfortable territory where it may sound as though staff is trying to be biased towards a particular item. So again, just an unfiltered thought. But I would find some usefulness in understanding what level of risk I'm getting into on the other side of my decision. And again, not necessarily something you can answer right now. And I don't want to talk over Melanie's thoughts. So Councilmember Bagby, please.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I think yeah, we're on the same page on this, and I think what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to like rephrase or reframe the question a little bit regarding the body cameras and the tasers, because I think that was a big. Sorry, I shouldn't use the word shock because it's not funny, but it was one of the things that kind of surprised me. And I kind of made an off the hand comment during the Police Finance Subcommittee that in my industry, technology goes down in price over the years, and this technology, because it has additional features and additional advantages for us, it is more expensive. So I totally got that. But I guess what I was surprised by, and let me set it up by saying, the police is like 53% of our budget, and Susie can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the lion's share of the city's budget. And I feel very comfortable with the direction that the city is going in the other operations with the capital improvement program. We're actually getting our house in order so that we don't just look at, how much a road's going to cost. It's how much is this road going to cost us in 20 years, and are we going to have the income to pay for it? And we're looking at things in a longer term and what the real cost is over time, so that we're not kicking the can down the road and ratepayers or residents are going to be in for a balloon payment. We're getting away from that. We're making progress on it. But I guess my question is for the chief and maybe the finance director and the city manager is, what's the equivalent capital improvement program that we have for the police department? And I think one of the challenges is that they're less capital and more consumable products that we find ourselves kind of getting bitten with after 5 or 7 or 10 years and getting like, oh my gosh, where'd that cost come from? And so I guess, so if they could kind of answer the question, and, maybe they've put it in front of me and I haven't gotten it, but, what's kind of the equivalent planning and accounting for all the equipment that we know we want to make sure that our police has got the equipment and the technology that they need to do what we charge them with, which is community-based policing and being responsible for the safety and well-being of our community. What we've decided our community values are, and then how those are the equipment and technology that our police officers need to carry that out, the policy that we've helped establish for them. So I guess that's kind of my question is, how can we kind of, we're doing it in the areas of other operations in the city, but how do we make sure we're doing it at the police department, which represents the bulk of our budget going forward? Does that help you out, Mr. Mayor? Because that was, I think that we were on the same page there after that meeting where we were like, wow, well, that's in line with our values and we know we need to spend the money, but is there a way we could have seen that coming a little bit better?
So
yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Can I step in and start with an answer to that? I think you're so one of the key things here that we're different from the other department heads is because most everything we deal with is operational. It's not project based, right? If I could come up with one thing, the police department's project, it was the new police facility, right? A rather large project, but most everything we do, in fact, I would say all of what we do is operational based. So, and then you have to consider all of the rapid changes that we have had to deal with and that are going to continue to deal with when it comes to use of force. When it comes to, so when we talk about risk management and liability, yes, these things that we currently have been in existence since 2015, I think. And yes, the warranties are expiring. And some of these things they break down, well, we're kind of on our own. We don't have a bunch of extras here, right? And so we want to equip everybody with these. So when we talk about risk management liability, some of the things as we move forward in this and some of these purchases, albeit a little bit more, also come with a lot of things, like you said, that do have to do with risk management. They do have to do with making sure the city isn't going to be liable because certain things happen now that comes included with this that helps prevent those measures. And so hopefully, I know there was a lot from both of you, and I hope I kind of tried to navigate in there. But as far as long-term capital and prevention measures, it is kind of difficult to foresee, like you said, other than knowing that these types of technology and equipment, they don't sustain forever. They don't last forever. And in the line of police, that's something that's going to happen, you know, as we move along. Even the ones that get purchased now, another 5, 6, 7 years down the road, we're probably going to be in the same boat again. You know, so how do we prevent that now? I'm not sure what the best answer is for that because of what the need is going to be, the technology, and how that works.
Okay. And what I'm hearing, and I think I got this theme from every department head is those foundations are being built to catch these things before we replace these because 3 years ago we found out we weren't compliant. We replaced this because 2 years ago it wasn't insured anymore, right? So that was 2 years of just risk, at least the way I understood it. And so as I see the themes shift towards, again, looking at a 2-year goal structure affords you the opportunity to say, hey, within 24 months, I'm going to be off my insurance, out of compliance. Our water treatment plant is going to blow up, whatever the risk may be. That's very, very helpful information, right? And so I see more and more of a theme where the cause and effect is being baked into the report. And so that's very helpful. So any other comments or questions? I will give one more opportunity for the public to weigh in. And then I believe David needs some level of agreement that we like the 2-year structure, some level of agreement that we're ready to move towards the budget planning workshop, and some level of agreement that we accept the report as it was provided, I believe. But I'll let David kind of get in on that. But any other questions or comments before I open it to the public? Okay. Irene, is there any hands raised by chance on this one?
No hands are raised, Mayor.
All right. David, if you could be so kind and just kind of give us a brief rundown of the bullet points you need us to hit for actionable items, and we'll do our best to accommodate.
Thank you, Mayor. In summary, we want to ask council and the mayor, you know, do you support the approach that we presented, that staff presented, your senior management team presented today? It sounds like there's general concurrence with the proposed approach to a work plan based budgeting document and goal statements. You know, is there any, does council agree and support the current budget statements as presented, or would you like to have those bring them back as part of the budget workshop?
David, I'm sorry, you're breaking up and I couldn't understand anything.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Vice Mayor. I'll hopefully my audio will work. I was just confirming that council supports the work plan based approach and the goal statements as reflected in the presentation. Ultimately, the next steps would be to bring back a draft budget for council's consideration and to hold a budget workshop in early May, ultimately, which will result in bringing back a budget for, you know, final consideration in late May, early June, and ultimately adoption before the end of the fiscal year. Prior to doing so, we would like to schedule a presentation and discussion about the budget, the financial forecast, the long-term financial forecast, and financial feasibility analysis that was performed by management partners that includes a number of strategies. So we're just seeking concurrence. I think I heard a lot of support based on the direction that that council provided this evening for you know, continuing to move forward, and that's what we wanted to do, is really check in with council and get your feedback and to help inform the process going forward.
Excellent. So I think the first question, and because we don't have any formal proclamations, we're going to go old school, and I just want to see thumbs up, thumbs down. How do we feel about budget statements being reviewed at the goal setting? Thumbs up, thumbs down, please. All right. So David, could you please bring those back for the goal setting in May? Okay. Thumbs up, thumbs down. We're okay with two-year goal. All right. Okay, that looks like you got everybody's okay with that. And I think that covers it, right? David, was there a bullet point I missed there? Do you have the direction you need?
I think we have the direction we need, Mayor.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, you guys. Appreciate it. The collaboration on this item, I think, was top notch, and it really gave us a clear picture of where we're headed and where we've been. So as we've heard echoed throughout the presentation, fantastic job. Let me go ahead and get us back on to the next item here. I believe the chief will be offering us an update on the tremendous work he's been doing with the Cloverdale Emergency Operations Plan. David, you may have a high-level introduction, or we can just cut the chief loose.
Well, I just want to start by saying I'm really proud of the work that Chief Ferguson has put into updating our emergency operation plan. What was included in your packet was, just a table of contents and the evacuation plan, but Chief's going to walk you through some of the new sections. This was a key task that the Chief took on with open arms to address and update. And, I think, Mayor, you spoke to the need to look at, mitigation strategies, and this one rises right to the top. It's providing appropriate planning documentation to address the emergencies that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So with that, I would turn it over to the Chief to give you an overview of the updated emergency operations plan, and we're asking your concurrence this evening. Chief?
Great. Thank you, David. I appreciate it. Mayor, members of the council. Before you is the staff report requesting council adopt a resolution approving the City of Cloverdale Emergency Operations Plan. As you know, the former plan was in need of a serious overhaul as it was last updated in 2007. Many significant events have occurred in the city since that time, requiring a more comprehensive plan that includes the tools necessary in responding to wildfires, earthquakes, floods, and pandemic. Similar to the former plan, the updated plan includes the function and principles of the California Standardized Emergency Management System, or EMS, and the National Emergency Management System, the NIMS, and the Incident Command Structure, or known as ICS. The plan is rather large, and rather than try to address it in its entirety tonight, I've just put together a very small presentation with about 10 slides to really kind of outline a few of the important areas of the plan. So I'm going to go to a shared screen here real quick. Let me know if you're all able to see this or when you're able to see it.
I just learned how to share a screen today.
Got it, Chief.
You're in? Everybody can see it all right?
Yep.
All right, great. So let me get back on topic here. Okay. So this updated emergency operations plan addresses how the city will respond to extraordinary events or disasters from the preparation phase through recovery. It includes a hazard analysis and identifies the responsibilities for each department. I think any person who's worked in an ERC, been involved in an ERC or any way, or even come in to check it out, you can see how quickly the incidents evolve and how critical it is to have contact information readily available so that you're not wasting time looking. I will speak from experience. When I first came here, the Kincaid fire was shortly after I started here. And it was a very, very difficult process for me because I didn't know a lot of the contact names, contact phone numbers. So this plan includes those local and countywide numbers to assist for anybody who comes into this plan. They have them readily available, which is very beneficial when times are moving quickly. Also, this plan includes a wildfire, flood, earthquake, and power safety shutoff event annexes that are useful tools in planning and development of the emergency response for these specific types of emergencies we've definitely experienced here in the Cloverdale area. So you just have the storm, flood, earthquake, and then as well as one of the more critical elements of the plan is the implementation of the mass care, and shelter guidance. This plan incorporates Sonoma County's Department of Emergency Management mass sheltering annex, which addresses actions taken in response to red flag warnings, flood warnings, and notice of public safety power shutoffs during the pandemic. This particular area of the emergency operations plan, this was just created by the county shortly after the COVID started to really become prominent in March. And the county had to come up with a plan on how to deal with sheltering in the event of fires where evacuations were necessary, and still manage to deal with social distancing and all of the elements of that. So this annex provides the prevention measures needed to protect individuals from infection and provides direction for the operational area and all stakeholders, including the city of Cloverdale, in ensuring interagency coordination. And if anybody's happened to take a look at this mass care and shelter guidance, the county has identified the Citrus Fair as a temporary evacuation point in this annex. So it's really critical for here in Cloverdale. This emergency operations plan also provides guidance through a means of checklists for each position in the event somebody who's working the emergency operations center is unfamiliar with the process or the control measures. The benefit of this program is you can be operations, planning, logistics, finance. Whether you're 100% confident in what that role is, there's a checklist that you can go through and line by line check off, have I done this, have I done this, and this is what the job is for each of these positions. So it's very beneficial in that regard. And I think the most critical part of this updated emergency plan it addresses how the city will respond to looming disasters are imminent and evacuations are necessary. Before this update, the city did not have an evacuation plan identifying zone boundaries or evacuation routes that are critical for traffic safety and emergency response. Through a coordinated effort with the Sonoma County and Chief Jenkins, the plan provides for an evacuation zone map outlining 6 evacuation zones with the incorporated city and identifies a primary and secondary route for each zone to ensure efficient traffic flow. So as you can see on here, this has been a long time in the process here as well. These zones are clearly established here, and the plan is to try to get this map out to the public as quickly as we can to be in preparation for the season. And we'll be utilizing the resources through the Resilient Cloverdale and those stakeholders to try to make sure and get these maps out to their different groups. We'll also post it out through social media and Nixle. But in addition to the evacuation routes, this plan also includes what are the boundaries for each of these zones so that you know exactly what zone you live in based on the boundary. So that's really beneficial too. And then here are the zones, lastly, that will be incorporated with the map itself. It gives a primary and secondary. And Chief Jenkins and I sat down on this and really kind of thought out, you know, how best to achieve this because, you know, as we mentioned earlier, disasters evolve rapidly. And what might be our best plan to get out is all of a sudden blocked by fire, flood, and we have to look at secondary routes. So even though we've identified these, they may not also work, but at least we've given some kind of guide for those living in those zones on the best ways to exit the city during emergencies. This plan is also available electronically, and it includes not only the entire contents of the EOP, but all related FEMA documents necessary to operate Emergency Operations Center, as well as seek reimbursement from the state and or federal government if necessary. And we've already experienced a reimbursement incident from the Kincaid fire. So we did appropriately fill out those FEMA documents and were able to get reimbursement. So that's the benefit of that. And I'd be happy to share and provide each of you with a thumb drive that has all of these documents on it because we're here tonight because the council does have to approve the emergency operations plan. It is part of the emergency operations plan. language. So, and I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
Awesome. Thanks, Chief. Do we have any questions for the Chief or David on the report we've seen so far? And I'm having to scroll along the bottom, so if I don't see you, just politely speak up. Oh, Councilmember Walter, go right ahead.
Thank you. With Councilmember Bagby's permission, just one quick question. Chief, Chief, the evacuation zones, how do they blend with the county's zones? And what I mean by that is last year, there's a friend of mine who lives out on River Road down by the Summer Bridge. And I guess he was getting an evacuation code that was saying from the county, Cloverdale. And they're not quite matching with ours.
Right.
How does the county assign the code? And is it confusing to the residents out along River Road and the 95425 zip codes that are not within the city limits?
Great question. And we'll start with the first part. The fact that he lived out in the county deals with its evacuation zones in a completely different manner than we do. They have different numbers assigned. If you will look at the counties, you can go onto the SoCo emergency and look at the evacuation zones for the county. And the 95425 zip code did not include the incorporated city when the county laid out its mapping system. That's what we were going to do. That's what they put on us to do for how we wanted our city broken down. So you would see, like in the fire, you would see he was either like 2A or some other. That's how the county identified the jurisdiction for the county outside of our incorporated area. So if he saw that number and it didn't coincide, it's because he was in the county and that's what they deemed that outskirt of Cloverdale. Does that make sense?
It does. So I guess what we have to do is educate the county folks not to pay attention to our evacuation zones. You know, they have their own to do when they hear that number. Okay.
Right. So, and part of that is the county is aware of our map. They have it as an overlay and they recognize that. So our numbering system, the 1 through 6, is if we become into a situation where we have to evacuate, we will utilize our own system aside from the county on how we're going to evacuate. That being said, the county may still be using at the same time those outskirts of Cloverdale to have those folks in the county jurisdiction also evacuate. So we're responsible for the incorporated area and how that evacuation plan works.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Again, if I don't happen to see you, just politely speak up.
I think that maybe David is going to talk about this, but and please, David, stop me and you can give a full report later on. But there's going to be there was a grant approved to continue to work on resiliency and emergency response. And I'm sure they're going to be working directly with Chief Ferguson and Chief Jenkins. Correct, David?
That is correct, Vice Mayor Cruz. Both the chief and I, as well as Kevin Thompson, will continue to, participate in development of a strategic plan as part of the, Resilient Cloverdale. And of course, our emergency response continues to be a critical component of Resilient Cloverdale. So we'll continue to integrate community emergency response as part of the Resilient Cloverdale initiative.
Yeah, and I have full trust that Councilmember Walter, that all this will be smoothed out because there's so much work going on among the team members of that committee that it is very, very impressive. And I feel very confident to face any kind of emergency. We continue to work on it because it's not a solution as yet. There's never a solution for a problem that you never know which one is going to be that is going to hit you. But the commitment of the people who are in this committee is very serious. And I really trust that all these doubts will be worked throughout.
Well, I agree with you, Vice Mayor Cruz. It's just that we have to educate the county folks, that when they hear Cloverdale is evacuating, they need to pay attention to their numbers and not ours. So that's all.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Lands, any questions or comments?
No, sir. Thank you so much for all your hard work, Chief. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bagby, anything you'd like to add? Okay. I have one
Thanks,
question.
Chief. I feel a lot better about this now because we know what state it was in. And I remember it was fun in the EOC. Your first week here during the fires in 2019?
It was more than a week, but yeah,
it was a month.
Yeah.
It was not. I think that you were basically cribbing telephone numbers from my cell phone and Lieutenant's cell phone and David's cell phone. That's how we were getting it done. So
it was quite the welcome to Cloverdale in the EOC.
It's better than Johannes Hobart's county planning. He was sworn in the day of the fires in 2017. So you had a month.
Yeah.
Yeah, for your welcome committee. So there you go.
You were spoiled.
So yeah, I feel a lot better about this plan moving forward.
Awesome. Thank you. I just have a couple questions. I noticed on the evacuation plan, all routes lead to 101. What's our contingency if 101 goes down?
Well, we all know here that we really are limited in our capacity without that highway, but there certainly is the question of a major earthquake disrupting that process. So and what would happen in this circumstance, just so everybody's aware, the point of the Nixle and the reverse 911 is to give those directions in the event 101 is disrupted. Right.
Okay.
We already found experiences where in the Kincaid fire, we were concerned that we weren't going to be able to have anybody go southbound. So the direction then started to change. People were going to go northbound, and we were looking at Ukiah's fairgrounds as a potential evacuation zone. Right. So we would be putting out that information via Nixle and a reverse 911. I would say the same thing for this. So it's kind of like I mentioned earlier, our primary route to get out of the city, of course, is the 101. But in the event those are disrupted, we would immediately get out there and say 128 if possible, or take other avenues out of the city if possible. But again, you cannot get every single exit and every single route to everybody. It would just be a major, major problem and you couldn't do it. So you try to do a primary, secondary, and if those don't work, we get on and announce where it needs to go from there as best we can.
Excellent. Thank you. My other question is, have you considered how often you want to ensure the phone numbers you have are up to date?
Yeah, part of that thumb drive, and I've already had to make changes. So there's in this regard, in regard to the critical numbers for the city and critical numbers for the county, these are easily exchangeable, and I'll be checking on them just to make sure. But it's it's in the thumb drive. It's a simple fix, and it's certainly something I thought about because when I started this plan, you were the vice mayor and Gus was the mayor, so we changed those around, right? So. Yeah, I've considered that completely. And what I try to do is eliminate names on some of those critical resources and rather just put the actual number of the general contact line.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you. I really like the additions that have been added to our emergency operation plan, especially the different zones. It will take some rollout and some education, and there will be a bit of a steep learning curve as we continuously approach fire seasons that happen earlier. And some people would argue we never get out of one, right? And so I totally understand the need for education rollout to happen as swiftly and cohesively as possible. So I really appreciate leaning on some of the key stakeholders we have in the service committee, especially in that resilient Cloverdale forum, where there's just a lot of go-getters that hop on this call every Tuesday at noon and are going to be just very happy to help ensure this information gets spread out. So some fantastic thinking in that regard. That really covers all my questions and any concerns that I might have had. I want to open it up to council one last time before I consider input from the public. Are there any questions or comments from my fellow council members at this time? All right, Irene, have any hands gone up that you're aware of?
No hands are raised, Mayor.
All right, excellent. I'll bring it back to the council. So what the chief and David have asked us to do is they've asked us to consider and approve the amendments to this emergency operation plan. Am I understanding that correctly, guys?
Yes.
All right, so we do have some action before us should we decide to take it.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to offer the resolution by title only. A resolution of the City Council, City of Cloverdale, approving the City of Cloverdale's emergency operations plan and authorizing the city manager to execute said plan.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Irene, we had a motion from Councilmember Walter and a second from Councilmember Bagby. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Walter,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Cruz,
Aye.
Councilmember Bagby,
Aye.
Councilmember Land,
Aye.
and Mayor Turner.
Aye. Thank you very much, Chief, City staff. I know it's a lot of work to get these things going, and 500 pages sounds like something I have no problem with you dealing with. So thanks again for the hard work on that. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next item here, which is a discussion regarding and potential action for, see how I'm killing time till I get here. Here we go. Resolution designating the Cherry Creek Affordable Housing Project and authorizing submittal of an application for fiscal year 2021-2022 Community Development Block Grant funding to the Sonoma County Community Development Commission. David, if I'm understanding correctly, you'll kind of give us a high-level introduction, and I believe Kevin's got the meat on this one.
Yes, he does. I'll go ahead and turn it over, Mayor, if that's okay with you, to Kevin.
Absolutely. Kevin Thompson, please.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Mayor, council members, this item is a resolution that would designate Cherry Creek Affordable Housing as the city's top priority for this year's CDBG allocation and authorize the submittal of an application to the Sonoma County Community Development Commission in the amount of $600,000. As you know, every year money becomes available through the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, through the Community Block Grant. The city participates in the Sonoma County Community Development Commission with the other non-entitlement cities through a joint powers agreement. So an allocation of money is given down, and that money is separated between the 6 cities. Cherry Creek has secured a lot of different funding sources, including tax credit allocations, Section 8 housing vouchers, and of course, some of money from the city as well. But there still is a funding gap. We hope that the CDBG funding will help fill that gap. If the council supports the resolution tonight, staff will work with Kingdom and the Wallace House to put together an application, which is due on April 30th. Once submitted, the CDC will evaluate the projects and recommend for funding to the city's technical advisory committee, who makes a recommendation to the board of supervisors for funding. You may recall we've done a lot of infrastructure projects in the past, including the Healdsburg Avenue ADA improvements, and now we're starting on the 2nd Street Park ADA improvements as well. So this one will be affordable housing. That concludes my report. If you have any questions, let me know.
Excellent. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it. Council, do we have any questions? Yeah, please, Councilmember Bagby.
Yeah, Kevin, if the council wants to move forward with this item this evening, does it help to contact the Board of Supervisors and talk about the project, or to ask Supervisor Gore for extra support, or what can we still do besides approving the resolution?
Well, it's been my experience with the CDBG over the past few years is they've turned the focus to affordable housing. They've also they've kind of changed the way they do it to really look for projects that are further along in the process, which is this one. I mean, it's about to get building permits. And the fact is we haven't gotten the CDBG allocation since 2018. So one of their priorities was to build up the money and give larger amounts to cities versus giving the small $100,000 here and there for ramps. So, the way it's been going, in my experience, is the city's town advisory committee makes a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. I think it's on the consent calendar on the Board of Supervisors. I'm not 100% sure. So it seems like, in my experience, whatever comes out of the town's committee is honored by the Board of Supervisors. So I mean, David may have another perspective on it, but it doesn't, it's not, once that decision is made through the committee, it seems to go through the Board of Supervisors. But David, what do you think?
Well,
I guess just to follow, if I could follow up with that. So will you be on the call for the meeting to make sure that isn't pulled from consent? So will there be somebody there to speak for us if it does end up being the last minute competition?
Oh, definitely. And I'm also on the town's advisory committee. So, it's people whose projects are, like Healdsburg rep, they still vote on the funding. And so I'll be there at that point to advocate for the project along with the applicant. So, and we'll definitely monitor when it gets forwarded onto the Board of Supervisors to make sure there's no hiccups at that meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Any other questions or comments at this time about the staff report we've heard? Okay, seeing none. I know we have Colleen in the audience. If you'd like to come on, Colleen, go ahead and raise your hand. And yeah, all right, let's go ahead and bring Colleen into the panel. If you guys have any questions for Colleen, she's going to go ahead and join us. She's also here, and I think I saw Deb Howell also on there. Yeah, so we'll make sure we get a question from her as well. So, all right, council, city staff, you have Colleen on the panel with us. Are there any questions directly for her before I give her a chance just to offer some input? Okay, Colleen, take it away.
Hi, good evening, and thank you. We are very excited about the possibility of closing on this transaction in about a month, maybe a few weeks. And this gap that we're talking about tonight is really important in terms of funding our supportive services. We'll close without it, but it's going to have a pretty dramatic impact in terms of our staffing. It basically cuts our staffing for supportive services in half. And so we're very appreciative of City Council considering this resolution so that Kevin can proceed with the application, and we're prepared to stand by to help with any documentation that might be needed so as to fund this and make it possible to provide our clients with supportive services that will address things such as childhood trauma and ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, and those kinds of things. Otherwise, it's going to be minimal services and not really what we had in mind or what the city, I think, had in mind in the way of supportive services. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. And Colleen, if you could hang tight just in case any questions from the comment or from the public might be kind of directed towards you. So feel free to go on mute, of course, but we'll go ahead and leave you on the panel in case you're addressed directly. And it looks like Debbie Howell's hand is up as well, Irene, if we can go ahead and bring her in. And Debbie, whenever you're ready.
That's pretty cool. Hi, guys. Thanks for taking my question. So I think it will be for Colleen. I'm not quite sure, but I just was asking for clarification on permanent supportive housing is a housing project. And if so, is it connected to coordination of care through the county?
So it's not a HUD permanent supportive housing project in the traditional sense where you have permanent supportive housing restrictions. We are providing supportive services, but not dictated by HUD in that way. However, we are required to provide supportive services through our vouchers. And as such, we would also participate in coordinated entry along those lines.
Awesome. Okay. That was my biggest question and a little line I needed for my own planning. So thank you, Colleen.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Absolutely. Thank you, Debbie. We appreciate it. Council, city staff, any questions for Colleen while we have her in the panel with us? Councilmember Walter, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Colleen, thank you for coming and chatting with us this evening. Measure O was just recently passed at the last election. I'm just wondering, do you see any income coming into you through Measure O at this point?
No, I think that if I recall that the funding was specific to severe mental illness specifically, and while we will be accepting people with mental health challenges, I think that's a whole different structure in terms of case management and clientele and the services that you provide.
I was more or less referring to you acting as an intake center. Along those lines, would you be getting any of that money?
That's not really part of the design.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Walter. Any other questions for Colleen before we move on? All right. Thanks again for joining us, Colleen, and being available. Feel free to hang tight in the audience if you'd like, and I'll keep an eye out just in case your hand goes up for any follow-up questions. But what I'll do right now is I'll go ahead and close public comment, just making sure real quick no other hands are up. They're not. And I'll bring it back to the council for deliberation. So we do have some action before us. If anybody would like to comment on that, take some action or otherwise.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move the item.
Fantastic. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Excellent. Jose, can you remind me if this needs to be read by its title?
This actually works, just moving the item, the item, but I know that the council usually does read the resolution. Don't know if you want to keep up that.
I'm all for efficiency, Jose. All for efficiency.
Would Colleen like us to read the item?
Go ahead, Melanie. You've got a wonderful speaking voice. Read us this item. We'll put it to bed.
I'll be quick. It's as the hour is late. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Cloverdale designating the City of Cloverdale's priority project and authorizing submittal of the application to the Sonoma County Community Development Commission for fiscal year 2021-2022 Community Development Block Grant funding for the Cherry Creek Affordable Housing Project.
Thank you, Councilmember Bagby. Irene, we have a motion from Councilmember Bagby, a second from Councilmember Walter. Would you please roll call for us?
Vice Mayor Cruz?
Aye.
Councilmember Walter?
Aye.
Councilmember Land?
Aye.
Councilmember Bagby?
Aye.
And Mayor Turner?
Aye. Thank you very much. Kevin, do a good job at those meetings you're going to represent us on. Yes, good. All right. Let me go ahead and move us right along here. I believe we are going to get into our subcommittee reports. And yes, so we'll go ahead and start with Finance, Administration, and Police. Our next meeting is going to be on April the 5th. You will see a new standing item as discussed earlier in the council meeting, where we're going to hear updates on activities as it relates to leash ordinances, vicious dogs, and things of like. Please forgive me for paraphrasing for all the pet owners out there and everything. I don't mean to group everyone together, just giving you the quick paraphrase version. The other thing is we continue to get updates on Joseph building self-healing communities and updates on the COVID-19 pandemic. And we look forward to seeing you there at 5 o'clock. Next, we will get into planning and sustainability, please.
It looks like we meet next on April 20th at 4 p.m.
Excellent. And Public Works, please.
Mr. Mayor, we will be gathering on March the 23rd, 5 o'clock.
Thank you, sir. Joint City Fire, please.
In a few months.
Excellent. And Joint City School District, please.
We meet on Monday the 15th, and I'm looking forward to that one. I'll move on to the Homelessness Committee. That one to be determined. We're looking at 2 different dates, and hopefully next month we'll have our first meeting back.
Excellent. Thanks, you guys. Those council member reports, I saw they came through in writing. Anybody have anything verbal they'd like to add? Fantastic. Informational reports, please.
No information.
Right, fantastic. And legislative reports, letters of support, opposition. So I'm going to let David do the details on this, but essentially what went down here is I do get emails now that I'm mayor and people care about what I think. And they wanted me to sign on to something that I did not necessarily believe we would have unanimous support over. So I wanted to bring council and make sure that I was given approval, permission, however you want to view it, before signing on to anything that does not have the majority's pleasure. So David, can you give a little bit of details on kind of what got us to this point, and we'll give the opportunity as to whether they support me signing it or not.
Absolutely, Mayor. And by way of background, the mayor received a letter from the Citizens Climate Lobby. The Citizens Climate Lobby is a nonprofit, nonpartisan advocacy group focused on policies to address climate change. They do have a local chapter in Santa Rosa. In particular, they are advocating for a revenue neutral carbon fee and dividend program. They contacted Mayor Turner and asked him to sign a letter that would urge our members of Congress to support a establishment of a carbon fee and dividend legislation and program. Just a little background on the carbon fee and dividend program. It's a program that proposes a rising fee basically on fossil fuels. I think the initial fee is around $15 a ton of carbon dioxide equivalent emissions of fossil fuels, which would escalate on an annual basis. The fee would be imposed on fossil fuels and other greenhouse gases at the point where they enter the economy. Ultimately, the fee, as proposed, would be collected by the Treasury Department and placed in a carbon fee trust fund and rebated to American households that would then generate monthly dividend payments to help offset the increased energy costs that would occur to households, during the transition. It's been indicated that, with implementation of the program, is that the dividend payments would represent, 100% of the carbon fees collected per month and result in savings to American consumers. They do reference a study that was conducted in 2013, which is based on a regional economic model commissioned by the Citizens Climate Education Corporation, which indicated that based on their analysis, it would reduce CO2 emissions by 52% below 1990 levels. And ultimately, if council supports the letter, it would enable the mayor to sign on, and it would confirm the city of Cloverdale's support for the Citizen Climate Lobby's program for a neutral carbon fee and dividend program. Some cities have already signed on to this or by way of a letter of support, including Sebastopol and Petaluma and Cotati. And there's the indication that Sonoma County has signed off. I didn't find formal evidence of it, but I didn't do detailed research. The mayor asked to put this on the agenda, whether council supports the mayor signing on to this legislation. There's a draft letter in your agenda packet.
So what do we think? Melanie, please.
Well, yes, I would support the mayor signing on to this letter, because I think just what we were talking about tonight, we are seeing the financial effects on the bottom line of the city on continued climate change through recent wildfires, through the flooding that we've experienced. And the price is only going up, and we're having to pay for, as the city and as taxpayers and as individuals ourselves, the externalizing of the costs that companies and fossil fuels industry should be paying for. It's like should be a cost of their doing business. They're enjoying the profits. Their shareholders are enjoying the profits, and we are stuck footing the bill that is the result of the burning of fossil fuels. And this is a very well-respected study that the policy is based on. And I think it's sound fiscal policy going forward, because, you know, we have to stop footing the bill for the profits that fossil fuels are enjoying. We here in Cloverdale have experienced the terrible effects, the fires, the floods, the reduction of our air quality and our quality of life. And we need to hold the industry responsible that it is causing so much of this devastation and so many of the costs. So I would definitely support the mayor signing off on this letter.
Vice Mayor Cruz.
I didn't find any timelines of implementation for this, just to 2021 climate legislation. When would these fees start being assigned? Do you have any more information on that, David or Melanie?
Vice Mayor, I do not have more specific information. I don't think a program has been formally established yet. It's really a letter of support for Congress to take action to develop and initiate a program. But I defer to Councilmember Bagby if she has additional information on the program.
Yeah, this is basically support for the policy for legislation to be developed.
To get going.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Walter.
Thank you. I'd like to know a little bit more about the downstream effects. $15 a ton, David, I believe you had mentioned. Who's going to burden that? Is that fee going to, in the end, pass to consumers of the product? I don't like when we just put a tax on something under the disguise of climate control and not have a plan on how we're going to spend it. I just think I would need a little more detail on that. I'm just concerned that we're just taxing and we're creating another bureaucracy.
Well, it's right there in the report, Gus. It's that this would be what's proposed is that it would be money that would go directly to the American consumer to offset the expense of moving away from fossil fuels.
What does that mean, Melanie? I don't get what that means. Is that going to lower my electric bill? What's it going to do for me?
No, Gus. It's collecting money from the fossil fuels company and then paying it directly back to the American consumer. And
we lost you a little bit, Melanie.
It would go to the U.S. Treasury.
Okay.
Right?
Yes. It would be collected as a tax, and then it would be distributed to American ratepayers.
From the companies themselves.
Just like very similar. I don't want to say that it is like your Social Security check, but it would be the same mechanism. You would get an automatic payment so that you could make that transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy.
Yeah. I agree 100% with renewable energy. I'm just not sure I'd like this program. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mm-hmm. Councilmember Lands.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I could answer one of the questions that I believe it was Vice Mayor Cruz had. The date they have set for this with the amounts of money is 2021. They've set the prices. It's not $15 a ton, it's $43 a ton. It's raises by 5% above inflation for every year. It would raise the price of, it would double the price of anything with coal, tax natural gas at $2.28 per 1,000 cubic feet. And your gas pump prices will go up approximately 38 cents a gallon to start. And then it goes 5% on top of that, on top of inflation. Basically, the way I look at it is it's incentivizing people not to use fossil fuels, and I get that. That's kind of the ultimate goal of this. However, the money they say it gives it back to you in a check. Well, they're giving back, say I use more than you do, Gus. They're going to give you the money because I get taxed harder on it because I use more. So it's incentivizing me not to use fuel, not to drive, not to use my heat in my house. And it's basically, you're going to lose, and you're going to have higher gas prices for your home, higher gas prices for your cars, because even though it's being charged, as they say, when it enters the environment, you know that's getting passed down to you. And the consumer is the one that's going to foot the bill. And for a low income area with money issues already, and all that we're going through, the last thing I want is more money in my gas bill, and more money at the gas pump.
But it doesn't say it's going to be implemented immediately. It's just going to start talking about it. And the thing is, by 2050, most of the cars are going to be electric cars. So there's, your consumption of gas is going to be much less. This is a future thinking.
So I don't want to be charged thousands of dollars in 2021 for an electric car I will have in 2050. That's just my opinion on it.
All right, so I'm definitely not hearing a consensus, right? If I were to consider myself, anyway. So David, we have some questions we need to answer. Why don't we go ahead and bring this back in 2 weeks, and we'll have the council take some action on it. One of the questions that we need to try and get answered is what the timeline for implementation is, if any of that information is available at all. And whether there is...
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, but that question is irrelevant because it's not an imposition. It's just a movement towards that, towards taxing companies. So it doesn't say when, because it's not legislation yet.
So we're just going to ask that to be confirmed, right? Because I'm hearing...
Yeah, just remember that, one version is the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act of 2019, House Bill 763, or House Resolution 763. So what we're asking them to do is to retake up legislation that has been languishing, and to address it in this legislative period coming up. That's what it's asking for.
Okay. And I think
so. Yeah, I suggest we all read more about it. Read the links at the bottom of the letter, so that'll answer several of the questions. Kind of the question came up about whether it's going to tax coal. Well, we don't burn coal for energy in California. So that's like so we're not going to see an increase there. We're also, as Councilmember Cruz pointed out, we have, California regulations about phasing out gas-powered cars and phasing in electric. So, much of the hit much of the financial hit that's been implied is pretty inflammatory. So I suggest that we, do a deeper dive, read the links, and get some more information about it. I don't think that this is this is not super controversial. There is support from this across the political spectrum. Sounds like, based on the questions, we need to get some more information. So yeah, I think we should bring this back in 2 weeks after everybody's done a little bit more research.
And I need to mention, Mr. Mayor and David, that I couldn't access all the links. So I'll have to.
It worked if you, it took you to a broken link site, and then it took you to the actual link. So it was a kind of a two-step process.
So we will see this item come back under the same heading in 2 weeks. I really encourage everyone to do the research they feel is relevant, and we're going to take action on what you'd like your mayor to do 2 weeks from today. Thank you for putting that in the agenda, David, and giving us a summary that we can build from. I do appreciate that. That's going to move us into our next section, which is City Manager, City Attorney Report. I'm seeing nothing on the agenda. Anything you guys want to add? Nope. All right. Next is a status update on current impacts to water supply. Mark, we have this as a standing item now. Any updates pertinent?
No, nothing really to update. Some information was sent to council, David put a report that was put together, kind of talks from the Mendocino County perspective. But what I put together here too is just some rainfall outlook. And if you want to zoom out a little bit, Irene, or zoom in, whatever it's called. So you can see we're into a normal period for this time of year, which is, the rainfall year is essentially coming to an end. So what normal rain we do receive here towards the end of the month, is not going to be a significant amount. Continue, Irene, please. So California, the drought monitor map is still, you can see the red, darker reds, darker yellows are starting to grow. You can see Sonoma County is half, basically half in the moderate drought and half in the severe drought. So we're starting to see the effects of the long-term dry periods. Continue, please. This is just the same graph showing you historic data on our droughts in California. You can continue. So this is the rainfall that we received in February. It sums up what I reported last time. You can see it's pretty neat. It's not enough. In March, it's starting out a little bit better, but we're not going to get that full average. So just kind of see what the bell curve is looking like compared to what a normal bell curve would be. And so we're in for droughts. Next slide. But water production continues as if it were, happy days are here again. So we do need to see some curtailment, and then we'll be coming up with a program on how to best address this. Some of our neighboring cities are starting to look at drought proclamations of various sorts and encouraging curtailment. But at some point, the state board will issue a directive. Continue, please. And of course, if anybody's been up to Lake Mendocino, which flows right into the upper Russian River water, river, you can see how this is historic in terms of storage. There's just not enough storage. At some point, there will be no more releases from Mendocino, Lake Mendocino, because it's below the outfall. So yeah, looking pretty bad there. So as a result, Sonoma County got some jurisdictional changes. So you'll see a lot less flow this summer in the Russian River. You can continue one more slide. I think I'll show kind of like what the flows are right now, but and Cloverdale being the yellow line there, which is 300, 400, but what we're seeing is still somewhat of the outflow from side streams from recent rainfall. But as we move into summer, you'll start to see that drop significantly, and we'll be down into the 50 to 30 range. And that kind of concludes our report, but we are critical, and we will be coming up with some suggestions on encouraging curtailment of water usage.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. Any questions or comments for Mr. Rincon? Thank you for the report as always. Yeah, no doubt. All right. Status on the current emergency and discussion for possible direction related to COVID-19. I think you got some big news for us today, huh, David?
Right, Mayor. The big news is that the Congress has approved the American Rescue Plan, which will provide significant funding to counties and cities, and particularly cities, non-entitlement cities like Cloverdale, which we'll be bringing back for further discussion with council. Also, it appears that because of the significant number of vaccinations that have been occurring in the red tier counties, purple tier counties like Sonoma County, that we are on the precipice of moving into the red tier. It appears we will be moved into the red tier starting on Monday, and which will enable and trigger additional openings within our business community, which I think is very significant. With that said, there's some still some pause relative to being vaccinated, and there's still a call for employing safety practices despite, that we're growing our immunity as a population, and there's continue to employ those practices of physical distancing and face mask wearing until we continue to build our immunity. But the good news is we are trending towards reopening the economy, and it looks like we'll be able to move to the red tier, which will be positive news for our business community. And of course, because of our partners like Alexander Valley Healthcare, who continues to get the vaccinations out. And in Sonoma County, we as of yesterday, we're about 162,000 vaccinations out of our 500,000 residents. So that's really great news because we're building that herd immunity. But because of the variants, we exercise a little caution and continue to practice appropriate protective measures to ensure that we continue to move in the right direction. So that's the end of my report, Mayor.
Excellent. Thank you, David. Any question? Councilmember Walter, please.
Thank you. David, I had heard just the opposite, actually. I was at a webinar today with the EDB, and they were saying that we're at least another good week, if not 2 weeks, in the purple because of the lag time for catch up. So, I hope you're right, but I'm hearing something completely different. So I don't know. Did anyone else go to that EBD meeting today?
Vice Mayor Cruz.
Yeah, I heard the same summary right after the meeting because I didn't attend it, but I did receive information about it. And I do have 2 questions. One is, David, could you remind the public and the council when vaccination is going to be taking place here in Cloverdale? And also, a comment from some people who received their first vaccination and were told that they're not sure if they can get their second vaccination. So, there's just so many things going on at the same time. We trust the EDB as a reliable source, but then we also trust the meetings you have with the health department and the county, but we're getting different information from the agencies and at the same time from the public. So we need to have some clarification here. We do have some constituents that received their first dose and have been told that they cannot be fitted to get the second dose, either because they don't have appointments or because they don't have the vaccine. And we need to have a conciliation between the 2 agencies on what they're saying to us.
Yeah, getting them all to communicate cohesively has been the challenge throughout.
And Mayor, members of council, I'll be on a call with Dr. Mays tomorrow morning. That'll be a point of clarification that we'll be seeking. My information is relying on the statements by Governor Newsom that we'd be moving to the red tier starting as soon as Monday. That was announced right around lunchtime, so it may have been newly released information that the EDB hadn't counted on. But of course, you can't always rely on statements made necessarily by the governor as being completely accurate when they're made at the dais. But it's usually a pretty strong indicator. So not always, the messages of our governor aren't always relayed to our local healthcare officials. So
they may not be granular. And I'll just point out, Mayor Debbie has her hand up, so she may be able to shed some light.
Cool. Irene, feel free to add her in here. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. I was on a call with public health, Dr. Sunday and Dr. Mace at 2:30, and they did confirm we were moving to the red tier on Monday. They're behind 2 weeks, about 2 weeks in their data collection from vaccines given and tests given. So that's kind of part of the confusion on it. And as far as the supply when the vaccines in Cloverdale are going to happen, that is right now dependent on when we get a allocation for Blue Shield. We're getting our allocations for second doses, but not allocation for first doses right now. We expect that to change in the next couple of weeks. So we're pretty hopeful about that. And I think you had one other question.
Yeah, Debbie. So the people who received the first one and have been told that there's not a vaccine for the second one, where should we send them? Should we send them to you?
No, don't send them to us. No, they got their vaccine probably through Sutter. And
no. They got them here.
Not from us.
On a Friday.
No one from us is not getting their second vaccine. So, I mean, that's data I have real time. There's no one that's not getting their second vaccine. We vaccinated the school district and we sent an email to them because they're scheduled for Monday afternoon. If we don't get the vaccine Monday morning, we'll get it Monday afternoon and we'll reschedule their appointments for Tuesday, but they are definitely allocated their second dose.
So then you are saying they need to clarify where they got their first one.
Yes, they need to clarify where they got their first one and go back to that source.
Okay.
It's possible. There's some people that can't, and there's special situations, but they need to go to the source if they got their vaccine.
Okay, thank you.
In every region in the county, in the rural areas, West County, Hillsburg, Sonoma Valley, and Alexander Valley, we're all vaccinating our communities. So when we put out our vaccine links, they're very targeted, and we scrub our appointments for residents in the Cloverdale, Geyserville area and eligibility for age or essential worker, whatever the classification is. So we're definitely keeping a track on that.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilmember Lands. And Debbie, feel free to hang out.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can we have a reopening plan or a restaffing plan for City Hall at this point when we move into the red tier?
We don't have a fully developed plan, Councilmember Lands. We senior staff is discussing that and identifying what are the key issues that we need to address to reopen. So we're definitely active in those conversations about how we can start to look at reopening City Hall and have the appropriate measures in place to ensure we do it safely.
I appreciate that. Optics are a big thing in a small town, so I look forward to being able to restaff.
Absolutely. Any other questions or comments? Okay, Debbie, thanks again for joining us for this item as well and offering your insight. It's incredibly helpful. So we thank you for hanging out on the call. All right. Any council direction on future agenda items, please? All right. With that being said, I will adjourn us today to our next regularly scheduled city council meeting, which will be Wednesday, March the 21st. The council will be convening for closed session at 5 p.m. Public session will open at 6 p.m. City staff, thank you for another very comprehensive and well put together report. Council members, thank you for the collaboration and working together towards these issues. And I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. Thank you.